Thank you, Chair. I can confirm you're live on YouTube.
Thank you, Georgia. Thank you to members and officers for attending today's meeting of the Planning Committee. Please note that there are no scheduled fire drills today, so if the alarm sounds, please leave the building via the nearest fire exit. I'm now going to ask Kathy to do a roll call to see who's present at the meeting.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Nota.
Present.
Councillor Barclay.
Present.
Councillor Bone.
Present.
Councillor Blunt.
Present.
Councillor Bubb.
Present.
Councillor Devi-Pali.
Present.
Councillor Everett.
Present.
We have apologies from Councillor Fry. Councillor Linton.
Present.
Councillor Rose.
Present.
Councillor Rives. Councillor Spikings.
Oh, I'm struggling. I'm struggling to hear, I have to confess. Thank you.
Councillor Spikings.
Present.
Councillor, we have apologies from Councillor Story. Councillor Diwali.
Here, sorry.
Thank you. Councillor De Winton.
And I too am here.
Councillor Kirk.
Present.
And Councillor Long.
Present.
Thank you. That's everyone, Chair.
Thank you, Kathy. I'd like to remind members that this meeting has been recorded and streamed live via YouTube, and that it will be still recording during breaks. Because of the acoustics in the town hall, please only turn your microphone on when it's your turn to speak. I also like to reiterate, it is really important that you use your microphone, otherwise people listening on YouTube cannot hear you. Also, when you speak, and please speak clearly into the microphone and avoid side conversations. Please do not leave the meeting during an item, otherwise you will not be able to take part in the debate or vote on the matter. Thank you for subs. Councillor Fry, Councillor Kirk, thank you for subbing for Councillor Fry, and Councillor Long, thank you for subbing for Councillor Story. I'm going to ask if the minutes from the meeting held on the 30th of June previously circulated can be agreed as a correct record. If there are no discretions, then they can be signed and agreed. If Councillor Linton.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, we can barely hear you, just so that you know. So if you could also speak up. I would like an amendment on page 17, please. Halfway down, the legal advisor explained the background and requirements of Class Q to the committee. The legal advisor also made the comment, material considerations need to be consistent in decisions being made. That was at 46 minutes on YouTube, in case it wants to be double checked. But I'd like that to be inserted as well, please.
Okay, thank you. Is everyone happy with the amendment that Councillor Linton has put forward? Agreed. Okay, we'll have that added to the minutes, Councillor Linton. Okay. So are members happy for me to sign the minutes off with that amendment? Yep. Could I also remind you about your phones to make sure they're switched off so they don't disturb the meeting? Thank you. Next on the item, declarations of interest. Obviously, councillors who are members of the internal drainage boards are noted. Any members with declarations of interest? No. Urgent business under Standard Order 7, none that I'm aware of. And members present Standing Order 34 are Councillor Bearshaw, Councillor Parish, Councillor Beals, and Councillor Kemp. Chair's correspondence, I haven't had any to pass over this time. And can I ask if members are happy for the committee to receive late correspondence?
Agree.
Thank you. So I move us to the index of applications. So we go to page 34. And it's the proposed condenser unit in Clench Wharton. which was deferred from the last planning committee, and it was initially called in by councillor Bearshaw. We've got Kirsten who's presenting the item, and it's for a full application.
Thank you, Chair. The application is for a proposed condenser unit at the Barn Station Road, Clenchwarton. The application site is located to the west of Station Road and to the southwest of Clenchwarton. I'll now start the presentation. So this slide shows the elevations, the site and location plan, the block plan. This is a photo looking west into the application site, looking east into Station Road, looking north along the eastern boundary and elevation of the agricultural building, looking south along the east elevation and boundary of the site, along the north elevation and application site, along the west elevation of the agricultural building, along the south elevation of the agricultural building, the electrical meter cabinet, fused east of Station Road, fused south of Station Road, few north of Station Road, few on Station Road looking south at the north elevation of the agricultural building, fuse on Station Road looking south at the north elevation of the agricultural building, wider fuse of Station Road, and then this is a Google map imagery of the site. The key considerations are outlined on page 24 of the agenda pack. The application is brought before Plan Committee as it was called in by Councillor Bearshaw. The application was deferred during the previous Plan Committee on the 30th of June. This was due to additional comments and queries relating to the proposed noise level condition, and further consideration prior to decision needs to be made. The additional comments are highlighted in bold throughout the report, and the recommendation is to approve. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Kirsten. We do have a number of speakers. I would also like to say we have Officer Jeanette Hollandsworth from CSN to answer any of the technical questions, because obviously this is going to be a very technical issue. So our first speaker is Mr. Mark Means, and he has 3 minutes. Mr. Means.
Thank you for your time this morning, and I do apologise for the anxiety to the residents and the valued time of you councillors for the mistake of mislabelling this application in the first place. It was a cut and paste mistake, and they had a grain dryer as the title at the beginning. So I do apologise, and thank you for seeing me this morning. The plans for the condenser were all correct when the initial application was put in. It is only 2 metres wide by about 2 metres high, 6 metres long. It has been designed with a rubber-lined acoustic liner to reduce the noise from the beginning. And the nearest house that we have, residents, is about over 140 metres away. The sound report shows that the background noise at night time is 33 decibels. The condenser with the sound report and noise and the fans, and looking at with the sound deadening as well of the compressor, will produce 17 decibels, 16 decibels less than background. The perceived standard is that anything 10 decibels less than background is inaudible. It's not easy to actually pick up with your own good hearing. I have poor hearing. Some of us will get older, will get poorer hearing. But it is meaning that at the moment, we are below 16 decibels of the background noise. Another example is if I'm speaking to this councillor here or this councillor here outside in the countryside, I will be having a conversation of 60 decibels at a metre apart. And that is a standard measurement used, and you can Google it and have a look at it, but it's between 55 and 60 decibels. We're talking something 17 decibels. Another example, which I got told, is by a noise consultant. If you're in a rural setting, so you're over 1,000 meters away from a road, you're in a house with the windows closed, on your own, breathing very softly, your limit, your noise you generate is 20 decibels. So imagine that in a room with the windows closed, you quietly breathing, we are talking very similar. 20 decibels is what they count it. We with a dryer, meaning at 17 decibels, 140 meters away, is unaudible or inaudible. My English isn't that good. The aim of this shed is to become the most energy efficient agricultural produce store in the country.
Thank you, Mr. Means. That's 3 minutes. Thank you. Councillor Bearshaw? Councillor Bearshaw's on Zoom. You have 5 minutes as well, Councillor Bearshaw.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just check you can hear me to start with.
To start.
Just a quick check. You can hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah,
Councillor.
thank you very much. Sorry for joining remotely. I had a meeting class this morning. Could I ask you to bring up Street View again and outside number 52 Station Road, please? Thank you. Has my time started?
Councillor Bearshaw, please start.
Yeah, thank you. And Kirsten, would you mind, while you're outside 52 on Street View, just keep slowly panning round so that everybody in there can understand this is actually a village location in the middle of a busy road with over 100 houses on, not the rural location that's being touted at. So we've just heard from the applicant, and he's adamant that the condenser can be controlled to 71 decibels and a drop to 33, I think he said. If that's the case, then why at the last planning meeting did he ask for the condition 3 to be upped from 71 decibels to 87? This is either because he knows full well, just keep panning, will you, please, Kirsten? This is either because he knows full well that he can't get this down to 71 decibels. So I'd like that condition putting on there, and I'd like it limited to 71 decibels. And I'd like it with noise equipment on it with auto cutoffs. This is all about protecting the residents. That grey bit you can see in the middle of the road is actually the grain dryer. It is just round the corner. We just heard that the breathing is 20 decibels. When we sat in that room last time with the fans going, those fans were measuring between 24 and 26 decibels. I'll work on 26, it's a higher figure. So 20 decibels to 26 is actually 600 times louder. And you know how loud those fans were last time. We're now saying it's actually going to be 71 decibels, which is significantly louder. It's quoted 87 decibels on the machinery, but actually, if you run that in winter, when the temperature can drop below -10, that's actually 89 decibels, plus or minus 2. So we could actually see that up as loud as 91 decibels. We have a duty of care here. The only thing this is in keeping with in the entire village is itself, which shouldn't have been built in the first place. It's on a busy road. It shouldn't be right next to houses. This is all about protecting the residents. I can just draw your attention to my writing in bold that's been updated. And can you have a read of that again? And you'll understand how unsuitable this is. Thank you, Chair. I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Councillor Bearshaw. Now have Councillor Kemp on Zoom, and you have 5 minutes too, Councillor Kemp.
Yes, thank you. Well, first of all, I'd like to say that this application right from the start there's been so much chopping and changing, and it's been so unreliable. First of all, it came in as a grain dryer, then it became a potato dryer, but you still have fans in a potato dryer. Then there was the noise report. The first noise report was apparently wrong, and another one came in that was right. CSNN, which is our Community Safety and Neighbourhood Nuisance Team, recommended conditions. They first of all objected to it on the grounds of noise, and they said that they would withdraw that recommendation if there were conditions regarding internal fans being removed from the building and no additional plant or fans. But the planning department said this wasn't enforceable. Therefore, the CSNN objection should still stand because they have placed a condition which is there to protect residents. And since the last hearing, a document was placed twice on the planning portal by the applicant, which said that the noise would be 86 decibels running at half speed. Now, they're saying that the noise modelling shows decibels 71 to 77 decibels. So which is right? Then they said that this particular specification, which shows 86 decibels, is wrong. We just don't know what the position is. I think you have to conclude you cannot protect the residents of Clench Wharton in the hinterland of 100 houses in a quiet road with a lot of residential residents there that are there during the day, already complain of excessive traffic noise and lorries. You can't protect them if you pass this application. The applicant has said that they're going to run the fans at half speed, which would reduce the sound, but this is going to be a commercial operation. How is that sort of condition going to be enforceable? They will be under pressure, won't they, to raise the speed to dry the potatoes, whatever comes in, at the highest possible rate. Therefore, nothing that they've said is going to protect the residents from what will be using them as guinea pigs. If this is built, it will be there. The planning department has said if there's a problem, complaints can be made, but it's not as easy as that, is it? We know how difficult it is for residents. They have to keep a diary, they have to send it in. And when they want to have proceedings for statutory nuisance, the planning department can often say, we can't do it. It's not a statutory nuisance. Now, it's a nuisance to the residents. And the residents who I've spoken to, I've been to see residents, I've visited them, I've spoken, and they are not happy with this. The applicant is right. In one respect, this is creating a lot of anxiety for residents. And given what happened last time there was an application, I really say to the planning committee, you cannot be certain with the inconsistencies at every level with this application, that you actually know what's being proposed, how loud the sound is going to be, and you cannot guarantee you're going to protect the residents. So I would recommend that you refuse this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kemp. Kirsten, do you have any comments, or Jeanette?
Jeanette, would you mind just making some comments?
Yeah, I have to declare that this is new to me. I'm not the case officer, although obviously I have had discussions with her and with Kirsten. There is considerable distance between the condenser unit and the nearest noise sensitive property, which will obviously mitigate or attenuate the noise considerably, as well as simply through distance will attenuate the noise, as will the absorbing nature of the topography around it. So the sound power level is obviously the sound measured as though it was as a piece of equipment, that's what's measured in the lab. So it's a laboratory sort of condition, if you like. It doesn't. What then happens is when you then install that into a practical location, you'll have either attenuation through barriers, or in this case an enclosure. I note that it was mentioned that the enclosure would be acoustically lined, which is what we would want to see. If it was just a steel enclosure, that could increase the noise by virtue of reverberation. So I just wanted to confirm that it is an acoustically absorbent lined enclosure, and that it's not in direct line of sight of the nearest noise sensitive property. So again, that will mitigate noise. With respect to so the noise consultant has predicted noise levels as 10 dB below background, which is that's a high criteria that would normally be set for noise making plant or equipment, or any commercial such noise making equipment. So 10 dB below background is a high criteria, and that what that is set for is to allow for any creeping noise levels. So when you've got numbers of different numbers of property, commercial undertakings or industrial units, etc., where combined levels of noise add up and then increase the background level. So that is a good criteria to go for, the 10 dB below background. It should be achieved. I wanted to know how often it would be in use. Is it 24 hours? Is it just during hot periods? I'm just wondering about the operation of it. That's just one question I have. And with respect to Councillor Kemp's comments about noise investigations, I do appreciate that sometimes it can take some time, but where we have a commercial noise situation like this, we shouldn't, and with a compressor unit, we shouldn't have to rely on people's diaries over an extended period of time, because it is a constant noise source. We would be able to expedite that noise investigation by virtue of the fact that we know it's there, and we know when it's operating. So that's, I can allay your fears with respect to that, although we don't really want to resort to responding to complaints. We'd rather get it resolved in the first instance. So those essentially are my comments. I don't know if there's any more questions specifically sort of on the technical matters with that unit. But the mitigation factors are the fact that it is an acoustically lined enclosure. It's not in direct line of sight of the properties, domestic properties, and there is mitigation through, attenuation through distance.
Thank you, Jeanette. Kirsten, could you have any clarification on the actual operating hours? Obviously, there's a question raised by CSNN.
As far as I'm aware, obviously, I believe it would be 24/7. Obviously, it may differ, but that's why the condition's been put in place, and the condition proposed is to limit the noise level. And the condition we've concluded is based on all the noise information we've provided, the comments from CSNN, speaking with CSNN, and that at 87 is considered an acceptable noise level at source. Obviously, that's at source, like I said, from the neighbouring receptors, it's lower. And obviously, if it's run at 24/7 at that 87, it would be acceptable whenever.
Thank you, Kirsten. So we're going to open up to members, Councillor Linton, and then we have Councillor Long.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, at the bottom of page 26, CSNN, no objections, but it does say, I've no objections, however, recommends conditions regarding internal fans being removed from the building, no additional plants or fans, and a revised noise management plan approved under whatever, 22/da. I appreciate on the following page, on page 27, that CSNN has now further added that it's considered the additional information supplied. But the lady speaking there who had actually further questions didn't really instill confidence that CSNN has adequately approved or looked at this. And so I would actually like to see that original request for that original condition to be put in. Can you please tell me why not?
So the original comment made by Susie, obviously these two requests, the fans were relating to fans that are on the existing building, and the existing building isn't part of this proposal, so therefore we can't condition the removal of these fans. Also, the fans which are on the building are internal building internally and therefore benefit from permitted development. They've also already been looked at by planning enforcement, who have confirmed that. Then the revised noise management thing was to do with the previous application. This has already been discharged and isn't relevant to this application, so therefore we couldn't enforce these two conditions. They don't meet our criteria of conditions. Obviously that was her original comment, and obviously that is then superseded by the additional comments. Obviously Susie wasn't available to attend today, but Susie has been the person in CSN who has reviewed all this information. We have gone through all this, and obviously I've spoken to Susie about why these conditions couldn't be put in. And obviously Susie has agreed that obviously she understands that and has looked at information about those conditions. With my condition of the recommending limiting the noise level, she agreed that it was acceptable.
Thank you, Kirsten. Councillor Long.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. This is one of those applications that we see from time to time where, you know, I absolutely appreciate that the local member, Councillor Bearshaw, is doing his bit to protect residents who have concerns about this application. However, we need agriculture to function in the countryside. That's where, guess what, it all happens. And I wouldn't have thought the applicant is doing this for the love of compressors or fans. They're doing it because their customer, you know, be it supermarkets or you know, wholesalers, require that the produce is stored in a particular way. And Councillor Story's not with us today, but I'm sure he would verify that as a farmer. Tom Barkley will say the same. I mean, you know, if your customer is, let's say, a particular supermarket, you know, they will say we want them stored in a certain way, otherwise we won't take your produce. And I know a little bit of this because my wife worked for an air conditioning company that produced large cold stores. So now we come on to the practicalities of it. In all of these types of affairs, we have to have what we call best practicable means. And when I worked and helped, obviously I was portfolio holder for such things as noise nuisance for a lot of years, and I even spent time out with CSNN, standing in fields with microphones on tripods, listening to background noises and noises that are being made. And always you have to look to best practicable means. Well, it sounds to me, if you're putting insulation inside the building and doing all what you can to mitigate, you're not doing it to deliberately make a noise. You're doing it because you've got to get the produce at a constant temperature. Now, if all that's said and done and the conditions within the report are right and correct, and on that basis, you know, I can't see why we can't give approval to this. And to allay all of the concerns of all of the people, including Councillor Kemp, who of course isn't the borough councillor for this area, she's the county councillor, didn't make one single point that was a county matter, but was allowed to speak under the borough plan. And I don't quite agree with that, but that's by the by. We then have a scenario that once it's done, if it doesn't do what it says on the tin and it doesn't perform, well, then there are other laws, nothing to do with planning, that will sort out that that's not being run to best practical means. So we're having a planning committee discussion about something which I believe is a separate issue to the land use. And I'm saying that the land use has to be, because we have to have crops that are in a good state to get to the public. Otherwise we won't eat, Chair, and that would be rather bad for us all, wouldn't it? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Long. Councillor Rice.
Thanks, Chair. I wonder if Councillor Long, we could take it as predetermined in his opposition to solar panels, actually, on that basis. But my thought is, there's just really one question to ask. That is, what is the noise going to be at these residential points? Because I've listened to a lot of very interesting rocket science, which takes me back to O-level. I still don't have any idea what sort of noise these residents are going to suffer. So can anyone answer that question very, very simply? How much noise will these people hear on their side? Is there an answer to that question?
Yeah, so the sensors receptors, so the two closest neighbouring dwellings, it would be 17 decibel at the receptors.
So it's 17.
Yeah, which is below background.
So
yeah.
right. So what noise will they hear? They will have 17 decibels.
Yeah, so basically at the moment background noise is 33 decibels at sensitive receptors. At source, this would be what it says in the report 87, but at those sensitive receptors it would be 17 decibels, which is, I think they said 16 below the background level, and the high criteria that they want to meet is 10 decibels. So this is an extra 6 below the 10 decibels that is the high criteria.
Thank you. I don't think I understood a word of that. So at the moment, the background noise is 33 decibels.
Yes.
And if they install this equipment, it's then going to have a background noise of 17 decibels. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, it will be.
So the background noise is actually, it's going to go down.
No, the background noise is the background noise. And this is going to be 16 decibels below the background noise at the sensitive receptors. Yes, so it's inaudible.
So it's inaudible. Okay, fine. So presumably we can condition that and we can enforce it and we can stop wasting this committee's time. That's what I'd like to see.
Condition at 87 is at source, and that is based on the noise information that we've been given. And the noise information includes all the information at receptors. So that noise 87 then gives those two sets of noises at the closest receptors, which is 17, which is below background, therefore it is acceptable.
Thank you, Kirsten. Thank you, Councillor Reeves. It's all suddenly become a bit clearer. Councillor Devlin-Pally.
Thank you, Chair. I think I agree with Councillor Long. We do need to support agriculture. This condenser unit, I've looked it up, is essential to keep the products dry, reduce humidity and so on, and preserve them so that they're marketable. And it makes sense to have one located next to the store. In terms of the noise and the anxiety around it, yeah, I've also calculated. I think the noise reduces by 6 decibels for every doubling of distance from the source. So, yeah, my calculation is the closest dwelling is 145 meters, and at 128 meters, you'd have a reduction of 42 decibels from source. So, you can keep extrapolating as the distance increases. Anyway, I'm satisfied that noise will not be significant at the dwellings. My only suggestion is I wonder if we could ask them to put trees around this to further mitigate that, because trees do absorb some of the noise and they might improve the visual kind of aspect as well. Whether that's possible is the question.
Thank you, Councillor Devlin-Pally. We'll pass it on to Kristen, but I don't think trees actually do have much of an effect on sound.
No, they don't. There'll be no noise mitigation created through that. And if it's a visual aspect, I think it's going to be very difficult to argue a small condenser unit would justify a lot of trees.
Councillor Barclay.
Can you hear me? Is that clear? I'd just like to say I thoroughly appreciate and respect what Councillor Bearshaw said at the beginning. However, I totally endorse what Councillor Long has said. I think this is an incredibly exciting agricultural project, progressive venture. I think, as Councillor Devlin-Pally said, I think we do need to support agriculture, especially now more than ever. I would like to raise one point that I don't suspect this farmer, the applicant in this case, really wants to spend a huge amount of money putting a condenser in. I mean, I can't even imagine how much that's going to cost. I think it's the last thing he probably wants to spend his money on. I think if you live in an agricultural community, there are going to be tractors, there are going to be lorries, there are going to be lots of things going down the road, and lots of things I'm not that happy about, but one has to live with. And then I don't think the condenser unit, I think it's going to be where it should be, and I don't think it is right in the middle of the village. But those are just my points. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barclay. Councillor De Winterton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
my instinct is to support agriculture. But having said that, I do appreciate the world has changed and we have people maybe living in our villages who maybe don't quite appreciate some of the agricultural activities going on. But having listened to everybody, it's like listening to a load of lawyers arguing about a point of law, really. Instead of lawyers, we've got acoustic engineers and people like that. The point of the matter is I'm trying to make is, do we trust the science? All these measurements and levels and stuff, because I'm not a sound engineer and I don't know a lot about it. You know, assuming the machinery manufacturer makes the bit of kit to the standard required, assuming the piece of kit is operated to the standard required, you know, assuming CSN do their jobs and can actually monitor it, and then if it goes wrong, are prepared to enforce it. You know, we got quite a few ifs in this, but you know, it's a difficult one, but it's all based on the science, and either it's going to work or it's not going to work. And I'm still sort of like, I don't know which way to go on this one. It's just either we believe the scientists and the machinery is going to perform, or we don't. I don't expect a comment, by the way.
Thank you, Councillor Derwent. Councillor Bubb.
Thank you. Where I live in Dersingham, we are midway between the bypass on the west and up on the hill, and we've got hills in Dersingham, there's a large grain dryer run by the Royal Estate. Now, if the wind isn't blowing, you can just about hear the dryer. There are plenty of people between me and the dryer who would be far more affected by it if they wanted to complain. We've never had a complaint to me as a borough councillor or to the parish council about it. It's a noise, it's a hum in the distance, far outweighed by the racket from the bypass. This one is in a much similar position. They've got the A17 to the southwest of it, which is going to be far, far noisier than anything that this little thing is going to produce. Only if the wind again is from the sort of the east to the north, would they be likely to hear it. It's not going to be a really offensive noise. I've in the past had big refrigeration units running 24 hours, 7 days a week outside. And by the time you've got 100 yards away from it, you can't hear them. So I don't think it's going to be a problem for the people there. It's going to do a good job for the agricultural part of that country. You live in the country, you must expect country things to be going on. So I'm not going to object to this one.
Thank you, Councillor Bubb. Councillor Everett.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I'm going to say that basically we've got all these different figures going around. So I'm hearing 33, 17, 71, so many different figures. And yeah, like most of us in the committee, we're not acoustic engineers or got doctorates in noise and everything. So I'm still pretty much, I think confused is the right word to use. I'm in agreement with, we do need agricultural land to say we need to make more, grow more food. And I know how exacting standards supermarkets can be if, in regards to that. So at the moment, I'm still kind of sitting on the fence as to whether to approve or not approve this. And I'll also touch on what Councillor Bearshaw said earlier, is there a reason why we've chosen 87 as the condition 3 and not 71? Again, more figures, more numbers being thrown in the scenario there.
Yeah. I mean, from a planning point of view, this is quite straightforward. I mean, we've got a noise survey, which that's where the 87 has come from. Clearly, you've got an agricultural business there that we, in principle, we want to support. It was just subject to noise. The applicant has jumped through a number of hurdles. We've got a very tightly worded condition. So from that point of view, and as been pointed out, there's almost the backup of statutory nuisance if there ever was an issue. I mean, we could enforce the condition anyway. So for me, I think this is quite straightforward approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So we have Councillor Kirk. Is it going to be a new point, Councillor Devlin-Pally? There's Councillor Kirk first, but Councillor Kirk.
Thank you, Chair. I really can't see a problem with this. Agricultural background, as many of us here have. I remember our first grain drive back in the late 60s was a howler. We had electric motors the size of those mirrors and fans nearly the size of them. Possibly that's why I'm deaf now. But technology has moved on. Supermarkets now rule the roost. If your crop's not perfect, they don't want it. They don't want wonky carrots, let alone damp grain or the wrong temperature potatoes for chipping. So not a problem with it at all, in my opinion. Good luck to the gentleman and moving on with technology. Thank you.
Councillor Kirk. Get Councillor Devlin-Pally. Is this going to be a new point?
Chair, I just want to labour the point about the trees. Buildings, trees and other objects can block or reflect sound waves, affecting how the sound level decreases with distance. AI.
But they're not needed for this application. Would you refuse permission without trees? And the answer is no.
Okay. Any members wishing to speak? I feel that this has been debated and we have given this real consideration. Councillor Rose, you have a new point.
Yeah, sorry to be a pain. Are we saying we can't actually have a condition requiring trees to go around this unit?
Conditions have to be fair and reasonable in this case.
Necessary, yeah. Necessary. Effectively, the test should be, would you refuse permission without that condition? I mean, that's the test. It's quite a high level. That's one of the 6 tests. So I think the answer...
I think maybe it's also about improving the conditions and improving the entire operation. If we can influence that in a positive way, isn't that something we should be trying to do?
Well, my job is to give you the planning. There are tests to apply with conditions, and we should apply them each time. And one of them is it necessary to make it acceptable, and that's something you need to consider. My view is it's not, because you're talking about a small condenser unit here, not the overall barn. That's already there, and that's crucial. If it was the barn, that might be different, but it's not. It's a condenser unit you're looking at here.
That said, can I propose that we do add a condition that we put trees around this condenser unit? Does anyone second that?
Yes.
So we have a proposal and a seconder.
Sorry, Tom, I missed that. What was your proposal?
I would like to propose that we introduce a condition requiring trees to be placed around the unit, which I don't think is going to be onerous for anyone. And I believe I have a seconder for that condition.
That's been seconded by Councillor Devlin-Pally. Any comment on that?
Well, as I said, it doesn't meet the test for a position of a condition, in my view. That's my advice. Now, obviously, that's a decision you'll need to take as members, but I don't think it's necessary in this case. As I said, if they're there for screening, you're just talking about a condenser unit rather than the whole barn.
Can I?
Please, can you not comment on the application while we're debating it? Councillor Long.
Well, if you all remember back when you started your very first basic training session, we talk about conditions, and you can't put conditions on that aren't justified. And in this instance, the maths doesn't justify. But as the applicant has said, there's already trees all around. There's all trees around the nearest receptor. That's why they're getting the figures that they're getting for 140 metres away. Right up near the building, well, you know, that's 87 decibel. Right, 140 metres away, it's down to less than ambient. So, you know, if you try and put conditions on that simply don't meet the basic criteria of necessity, you know, you're just going to lose them at appeal, and it's going to waste our public's money.
Thank you for a very valid point, Councillor Long. I don't feel that the actual trees are necessary for this application, but a proposal has been made and it's been seconded, so I will take it to the vote. But again, I just don't think it's necessary, and I wouldn't turn the application down based on the fact of trees in this instance.
We're just voting for the imposition of a condition.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Councillor Nota.
Against.
Councillor Barclay.
Against.
Councillor Blunt.
Against.
Councillor Bone.
Against.
Councillor Bubb.
Against.
Councillor Devlin-Pally. For. Councillor Everett.
Against.
Councillor Linton.
For.
Councillor Rose.
Against.
Councillor Ives. Councillor Spikings,
Against.
Councillor Diwali,
Abstain.
Councillor De Winton,
Against.
Councillor Kirk
Against.
and Councillor Long.
Against.
Yeah, that was lost.
Okay, thank you, Kathy. So we'll take it to the actual vote on the application, which is to vote for. I think there's significant conditions. Oh, sorry. Councillor Linder.
Yeah, sorry, you forgot me before you go to there. In light of that, is it possible then to amend condition 3 to lower the 87 down to the 71?
I don't think it is possible, and it's referenced on page 31, but with the acoustic cabinet surrounding it does go down from 71, if that's what I've read correctly, although there is a lot of information about decibels. We've deferred this application to get expert advice from a Pacific officer, which has been presented to us, which says that the noise level at when it reaches the people will be less than background noise. So we have to have faith in the expert advice we got when we divert this application. Okay. Are these new points? Because I really feel.
If Councillor Linton has a proposal, I'd wish to second that. My reason would be that we're really protecting the residents against the failure of machinery or incorrect operation of the sound, the acoustic cabinet. We're just demonstrating to our residents that we listen to them, even if we can't hear them above the ambient noise.
I mean, in pure planning terms, that'd be undefendable at appeal. I mean, you would go down with costs. If that condition was appealed on that, you would go down with costs.
Yeah, I think that's an important consideration. Councillor Everett.
It's only just to get advice from the assistant director on whether it was enforceable at appeal, but I've seen Councillor Long shake his head and you saying it's not defendable, so that was all I wanted clarification on.
Agreed. I feel this will waste time. This has had a good debate, and I think we've put a reasonable measures in place to mitigate that from the. So we're going to take it to the vote. So the vote is for.
Did we have a proposal? So was that put forward? Are they going to withdraw that?
Oh, apologies. We did have a proposal, and it was seconded. So we will.
Did you want to go ahead with that, or do you want to withdraw that proposal? Because at the moment we've got, I think, as I understand it, we've got a proposal of Councillor Linton, seconded by Councillor Rives, to lower the condition decibel to 71. Or do you still want to go ahead with that, or not? Is my question.
Yes, I do. I'm sorry, I don't think that being scared of going to appeal is something that needs to, yeah, I mean, yes, we need to be mindful of that, but maybe we need to be better at fighting at appeal, if that's the case.
There's very specific advice given by the government on this, planning practice guidance, and again, vague, generalised, accurate insertions about proposals' impact and supported by any objective analysis. I'm reading from the costs that we get, the advice for us. Refusing permission on planning grant capable of being dealt with by condition. Obviously, this is but slightly different. But again, you've got a failure to produce evidence to substantiate each reason for refusal on appeal. So those are grounds for costs. And what we've got is, I mean, it's quite a tight already, 87 decibels. You've heard that. You've heard that it's based on a report. And in a pure technical planning terms, that is what you should stick with. And it would be very difficult to substantiate because we haven't got the evidence to back that up.
Apologies, Chair. Could I just add to the points made by officers, please? Can you hear me?
Yeah, Nikki, do you want to follow?
Yeah, obviously, I just wanted to make a brief comment about this and the point made by members that obviously if the acoustic barriers failed, for example, and this would be some reasoning as to why you should impose a reduced level. I think it's important to bear in mind everything that Stuart has said to you, that conditions must be reasonable, they must be necessary. In this particular case, you've seen expert evidence that demonstrates that it wouldn't be reasonable or necessary to reduce those levels. But that aside, if there was any failure in the equipment or the acoustics, you have a means of dealing with that. You have the planning enforcement regime where you would enforce against that breach. So I don't consider that that's a reason to therefore reduce the decibel level in that condition, because if there was any failure, you would enforce. And I'd also just reconfirm that you are then open to cost claims on appeal, as Stuart has also confirmed. Okay.
Thank you, Nikki, for the clarification. Now, going forward, Councillor Linton, now you've heard the legal advice, do you still want to proceed with the
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Councillor Long, and then I have Councillor Devler-Powell.
Here we go debating the ridiculous. We have experts who have said this is how much decibels there will be at the source. We've got unexperts telling us that they want a different figure. They think that what they're doing is trying to justify a better outcome for the ward member because he stuck his neck out and said he'll do something to try and get this stopped. Well, that's not planning justification at all. But let me just liken it, please, to what happens at county planning when we're dealing with quarries. And quarries include stone crushers. So you think a condenser is noisy, stand next to a stone crusher. They're actually cutting and grading stones down to a different size. So you're going to hear noise from them, but actually not as much as you perhaps think. We also deal with conveyor belts to move aggregate across quarries. And again, the perception is they make a lot of noise. And yes, they can do. But if they're working properly and they're well maintained and the bearings are oiled, they do a job of work. Now, the conditions that we're having presented to us is for the equipment to do a job of work. We're not saying it's going to make no noise at all. We're saying it's got to do a job of work. It's got to keep the store to the required temperature. If the bearings go in the fan and it starts screaming like a banshee, then the conditions are already there to solve the problem. And it wouldn't be much of a phone call. There's a hell of a noise coming from. Actually, it's in the person's interest who owns the equipment to get it maintained, because if it fails because the bearings have gone, you've then not got a store that you can use. Wasting capital, wasting product. So it's in everybody's interest for it to work properly. And for that reason, you cannot justify a condition over and above what the science has dictated to us. And it's great that people, want to try and protect the public. It won't affect the noise level at all. It will only be a different threshold for when enforcement has to start to happen. But bearing in mind what we've been given, that's the required figure. We make something more onerous. We're going to have council staff out trying to measure the noise, for slight discrepancies. That's set at a figure so that if there's a problem, it'll be highlighted. Absolutely ridiculous. I'll be voting against this condition.
Thank you, Councillor Long. Councillor Devler-Powell, then Councillor Rive.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I strongly object to Councillor Long's comments about our motive behind speaking on this application. I have nothing but the good of the residents of West Norfolk when I speak. I've read the paper thoroughly. I've listened to all the speakers. To suggest that we're doing this in order to somehow keep somebody else happy is just outrageous, in my opinion. And I would kindly request them to withdraw that comment.
I'll happily withdraw that comment, Chair.
Thank you. Moving on to the point. The point is not adding a new condition. What Councillor Linton has suggested, which I do support, is in accordance with the report that's been produced. So we've been told in black and white terms that there will be an acoustic wall around this unit, which will reduce the sound at source to 71 decibels. All we're saying is stick to that when you put your condition in. The condition's already there. You are saying in your report that the sound at source will be 71 decibels. Just use that figure. That's what we're asking. The wall is already being proposed. It's there. Nothing new is being proposed. We're not changing anything, and we're certainly not claiming to be experts. We're looking at the report and just asking for consistency. Why is that too much?
Thank you. Can we pass comment on?
So yeah, obviously the 71 has come from the acoustic lining going around the condenser unit, which obviously does reduce it. But our assessment has been done on 87, the overall thing, and that's why we've conditioned it to be 87, because it's not necessary to approve it with it being 71. And it also gives that leeway if something does go wrong as well. So we have assessed it on 87, and we have powers, as I said, through CSNN, through plan enforcement. If they breach that condition, they go higher than 87, we have powers to take action. But at 87, the impact on the surrounding neighbouring dwellings and the further residential thing is acceptable.
Thank you, Kirsten. Councillor Rice.
Thanks, Chair. I'd like to thank Councillor Long for very eloquently setting out the case for increasing this limit, because as he recognises, machines go wrong. And we want to kind of cover ourselves against those machines going wrong. And that's why we want this limit. It's not rocket science, unlike most of this discussion today. And also I'd refer councillors obviously to LP 21, whereby noise is a relevant factor when we make decisions on applications like this. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll go Councillor Barclay.
So it's quick, I don't want to go on because I think enough's been said, but what I would say is that if a huge bit of machinery, or in this case it's a small condenser unit, not as big as one imagines, if something goes wrong, they don't want it to, the applicant won't want it to be broken, making a huge amount of noise for a long period of time. It's going to cost them a lot more money in the long run. I mean, surely as soon as any bit of machinery goes wrong, you call the engineer out and it gets fixed that day. Because if you're operating agriculture or any business, you need to have it fixed immediately. So it's not going to be sort of going on for months or weeks before someone gets it fixed. Otherwise, it's a false economy. You wouldn't want to operate like that. And I respect what the officers and the studies that they've done, and they're experts as well. So that's the end of what I've got to say.
Councillor Rice is going to be a new.
This is the last one. It's less about the fact that machinery may or may not go wrong. All machinery goes wrong. At least all machinery I've ever bought always goes wrong. It's about the fact that, there has to be correct operation of the unit. So what happens if the door is left open? What happens if, the acoustic measures themselves fail or they're not done correctly? It's really about that. It's ensuring that, it's ensuring that the installation is used properly and professionally. And there's no reason to think that it won't be, but we're really just covering ourselves against that situation. That's what we're trying to do. Thank you.
Kirsten?
So that is what that condition is there for. So the lining, the acoustic lining, is to reduce the decimals down to 71, but that leeway up to 87 gives that buffer. So if, for example, the door's open or something does go wrong, it has that buffer, and we've assessed it on 87, and 87 is acceptable, and the closest receptors would have inaudible decibels. So that is why that condition is slightly higher than the 71 as well, to allow that buffer.
Thank you, Kirsten. So a proposal has been made by Councillor Linton and it's been seconded by Councillor Devupally, or was it Councillor Rice? So the proposal has been made to change the conditions. So we will have to take it to the vote. So the vote is for the extra condition regarding the change of condition to the decibel.
Councillor Noter.
Against.
Councillor Barclay.
Against.
Councillor Blunt.
Against.
Councillor Bone.
Against.
Councillor Bubb.
Against.
Councillor Devupally.
For.
Councillor Everett.
Against.
Councillor Linton.
For.
Councillor Rose.
Against.
Councillor Rives.
For.
Councillor Spikings.
Can't remember. Against.
Councillor De Wally.
Abstain.
Councillor De Winton.
Against.
Councillor Kirk.
Against.
And Councillor Long.
Against.
Yeah, that was lost.
we refer back to the original recommendation, which is to approve.
Councillor Noter,
For.
Councillor Berkeley,
For.
Councillor Blunt,
Or.
Councillor Bone,
4.
Councillor Bubb,
For.
Councillor Devi Parley,
For.
Councillor Everett,
Abstain.
Councillor Linton,
Against.
Councillor Rose,
For.
Councillor Rives,
For.
Councillor Spikings,
For.
Councillor De Woolley,
Abstain.
Councillor De Winton,
For.
Councillor Kirk,
For.
Councillor Long.
For.
Yeah, that was carried, Chair.
Thank you, Kathy. The time's now 10:30, and the next two applications are quite big, so we will take a 10-minute comfort break. It is just gone 20 to 11. Can members please take the seats and members of the public return to the gallery? I've been made aware that some of the members of the public was texting during the last debate, which could be a distraction. So could you please put your phones on silent if you're going to use them? So we move on to the next application, which is on page 35. It is for a reserve matters application, and it's for 69 dwellings in Heacham, and it's going to be presented by Natasha and page 30.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Natasha.
Yes, so this application seeks reserved matters for scale, appearance, layout and landscaping for the construction of 58 dwellings and associated infrastructure following the grant of outline consent for the construction of up to 69 dwellings and associated infrastructure granted under outline application 15003520M. So the site that you can see on screen comprises approximately 3.6 hectares of agricultural land on the edge of the built-up area of Heacham, and it forms part of housing allocation site G47.1 in the local plan. Together with application 21014112RM, also before committee, the two sites, which you can see here in their entirety, make up the whole allocation, which is 6 hectares. So the application is 58 dwellings, 12 would be affordable, and those are indicated on this plan by the red dots. There's 27 detached properties, 24 semi-detached properties, of which 8 are affordable. There's 1 terrace of 4 down here, which is adjacent to an existing terrace on Cheney Hill. And there are 3 bungalows, which are the pink buildings outlined here. So this can be further broken down into 6 2-bed units, 4 of which are affordable, 33 3-bed units, 8 of which are affordable, and 19 4-bed units, none of which are affordable. The density of development of the site is 16.2 dwellings per hectare, and for comparison, the density of both sites, so phase 1 and phase 2 being later before you today, is 20 decibels. No, well, it's really not. It's 20 dwellings per hectare decibels. Sorry about that. So for comparison, the density of development of Maria Meadows is 16.2, and of Benstead Close, which is this development here, is 39.7. So proposed boundary treatments, which you can see on this plan here, comprise timber post and rail fence, 1.8 high hedge and 1 brick wall in front. So that's these ones here. So you've got a low hedge, a low wall with a high hedge behind to soften it, post and rail fencing. There's a generous amount of public open space, that's 6,917 square metres, and it includes 2 play areas, a leap and a lap, an interconnected series of footpaths you can see throughout, and if this application and the next application, they all link in all these routes. In relation to the dwellings themselves, the majority are 2-storey. There are no 3-storey dwellings any longer. And they basically comprise red brick, red pan tiles. Some of them have cast stone. There's timber cladding elements, but only in the stores and refuse bin enclosures. And there's metal framed windows and doors. All the dwellings are shown to have an air source heat pump and solar panels. So I'm just going to show you a few of the house types. The house type for you is C, and there are some affordable and some market dwellings that are house type C. The only difference between the two are that the market houses have en suites and the affordable don't, and that is a requirement of the affordable housing that they don't have en suites. This is house type E, and again, there's a mixture of affordable and market. This is an example of G2, and you can see one of the garages. These flat roof garages have green roofs, and this is one of the larger detached properties. This shows H3, which is one of the frontage properties, plot 1. This shows H4, which is another frontage property, being plot 45. This shows H5, which is the third property with the principal elevation fronting Cheney Hill. This is an example of house type J, which is the largest property, and this is an example of the 3 bungalows. So I appreciate this is quite small, but this is just showing you access, which is already approved, and access is from Cheney Hill. This also shows some off-site highway improvement works that were also approved as part of the outline. So at Cheney Hill, it will be widened and dropped curb crossing, tactile crossings here. On Malthouse Crescent, there's an existing wall that will be removed. And again, we've got tactile crossing points. And then over at the exit of Maria Meadows, you've got a widening here with new footpath and again, tactile crossing here. And what you've got at the end of this road is one of the schools serving Heacham. So that shows connection to that. So parking, all parking accords with parking standards. Garage provision is as shown. So you can see that there are double garages, single garages, carports, and visitor parking spaces, which are shown red, which basically surround the open space. This shows sections across the site. So most of the site is relatively flat, but in this area here, you have the greatest change in levels, and you can see that through these sections. Now, what these different sections show, so section 1 corresponds with number 1 here. So it's showing you along Cheney Hill. So this is showing you Malthouse Barn. This is showing you the frontage properties, and then you see the rear of 2 type C dwellings, and then the existing terrace on Cheney Hill. Number 2 shows you a cross section here. So you're going up from the frontage properties into this part of the site. Number 3 shows the area next to Maria Meadows. So you've got the bungalow here, which will be next to Maria Meadows, and then Maria Meadows itself. Number 4 is showing you from the terrace properties going in the other direction, really, down that way. And then we have number 5, which is showing you straight across the centre of the site. Site is in flood zone 1. Access is approved at the outline stage, and there are conditions on the outline application that cover construction, drainage management, maintenance of the roads and the footways, highway safety, splays, off-site highway improvement works that I just showed you, foul and surface wallage drainage, outdoor lighting, amenity, so dust suppression, construction management, archaeology, landscape and landscape management, trees, fire hydrants, ecology and contamination. There's also a section 106 agreement secured, and that covers outline space specifications, on-site affordable housing provision, which is 20%, an education contribution per dwelling, a library contribution per dwelling, and a habitat regulation mitigation contribution. Leading up to this application, we also got a deed of variation on this section 106 and the corresponding one, which increased that habitat regulation contribution from £50 per dwelling to £304 per dwelling, in line with the latest GIRAMs. So issues covered that I've just listed by condition in the section 106, they don't form part of the discussion of the reserve matters application. So the key issues are as outlined on page 37. The recommendation is to approve. The application is before committee because it was called in by Councillor Parish, and the officer recommendation is contrary to the Parish Council recommendation. So we're looking now north along Cheney Hill, and this is Malthouse Barn that you can see. Now we're looking towards the site, and this is an existing footpath crossing that goes across the site. It's an informal Now you can see across the site, and there's one agricultural building that you can see, and that allows you to see the height change as well. This shows you the location of the proposed access. It's basically where this dead tree is, and then looking south along Cheney Hill. Now we're going into the site and we're looking south towards the terrace of properties. Now we're looking back at Malthouse Barn. Again, this is Malthouse Barn, and this is showing the existing boundary running along the north. Another picture of that boundary, and now we're looking back at Malthouse Barn from the site. This shows us a boundary with the properties to the rear of Cheney Hill, and now we're swinging round and we're looking towards Malthouse Crescent. And now we're looking at Malthouse Crescent and moving up to Benstead Close. These are the properties on Benstead Close. Again, Benstead Close, and then you've got a couple of properties that are actually accessed off School Road. And now you're looking at the first property that's served from Maria Meadows, and swinging around to see the side elevations of other properties on Maria Meadows. And these are the properties that the rear elevations of properties on Maria Meadows. Now we're looking at the position of the proposed cycle and pedestrian link with Maria Meadows. This is standing further back in Maria Meadows, and this is the access to Maria Meadows, looking along Station Road from Maria Meadows. So in terms of the off-site highway improvement works, there would be a footpath here. And then this is looking further down south along Station Road. This is looking from Malthouse Crescent, where I earlier explained that part of a wall would be removed as part of the outline consent. And this shows part of the footpath that will be widened as part of those off-site improvements. There is late correspondence that also includes an additional condition. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Natasha. We have a number of speakers on these applications. It's a major application, so you'll get 5 minutes. We've got a Mr. Michael Grammer.
Good morning. Not a decibel in sight on this one, I'm afraid. I'm here to speak regarding phase one, but I find it difficult to separate it from phase two, as many of your photographs actually taken across the site of phase two. When I look at the drawings of the two combined, it's not a construction site, it's not a development, it's almost a village. It's that big. And as such, for unadopted land under the protection of the council, I think there are serious issues regarding the maintenance of the communal areas and who's going to pay for them. Now, I haven't got a great deal of experience of management companies, but I do know that they come and go. And I do know that somebody has to pay them, and there has to be some sort of continuity regarding that payment. That aside, my main concern originally was the access or proposed access to via Maria Meadows into phase one. This is shown as an entrance 2.75 wide on the drawings, and I understand the committee has actually put in a condition to reduce this to, well, not actually reduce the size of it, but to actually make it specific to pedestrians and not vehicles, which we welcome with really big time. Maria Meadows was developed by Aubrey Thomas, and it is what it is, 9 houses fit for purpose. The road and paths, well, the paths are unusable because everybody has to park on them because the road is so narrow that you can't get two vehicles past each other. So at the moment, we look at an aesthetically pleasing laurel hedge at the end of the road. Quite clearly, that wouldn't be a sufficient barrier ongoing for this development. So whatever was put into place would have to be sufficient to prevent any vehicles using it, but also to allow disabled access, easy, and bearing in mind, as you come through this hedge, where the path is on the drawing, all the vehicles that come down the road are turning in this hammerhead. You've got reversing vehicles and pedestrians. I don't like that. So the more we can minimize that and the risk of that, the better, and increase visibility, and probably the hedge is not the right thing to be there long term. Although, again, I say, it's aesthetically pleasing. With this great number of unadopted roads on the site, I was a bit concerned to see the street light had been removed, or the street lights. Now, the police site risk assessment was carried out during, whilst those lights were in place. I find it difficult to understand how that risk assessment would still be relevant in the light of a significant change. I also understand on phase 2, and I'm sorry to allude to it because we're not really to, but there's no segregation of pedestrians from the vehicles. That worries me greatly. If I'm looking at the plans, that is correct. I would never ever have a site of this size where pedestrians and vehicles were not segregated. You couldn't build a factory like it, so you wouldn't do a residential site like it. It's taken 11 years now from this to get to where we are today. And that seems an inordinate long time. I spent the last 18 years of my working life as a health and safety consultant. And I worked on construction design management project as CDM coordinator, and prior to that, planning supervisor. It concerns me looking at this that it's probably a medium to high risk site in its present guise, and it needs to be considered. The lighting and pedestrian vehicle segregation needs to be considered. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grammer. We have a Mr. D. Warnsley from the Parish Council. You have 5 minutes as well, Mr. Warnsley.
Thank you, and thank you, committee, and thank you, Chairman, for allowing me to speak today. I'm currently Chairman of Heaton Parish Council, and I just wanted to raise some of the concerns we have as a council. First of all, another thank you is to thank you to considering a condition to restrict access from Maria Meadows to pedestrians and cycles. So thank you for that. I'm actually also a resident of Trainer Hill, so this will affect me as well. I'm concerned, we're concerned Parish Council the amount of vehicles that might come down Lamsey Lane, up and down Lamsey Lane onto the access of this site, if that's the only site entrance from Trainer Hill. Currently, we have a SAM2 monitor, and the average daily cars or vans can be up to 1,000 cars coming down that road. So that on top of vehicles as well, construction site. We're concerned about the safety of children, as there is a school entrance just opposite where that site entrance is going to be as well. So that's a concern for us during school hours. And we're also concerned about, oh, I've got my wrong page, excuse me. So that's one big concern for us, is the amount of vehicles and construction traffic up and down Trainer Hill. Also, we have some of the initial first phase backs onto Maria Meadows. Is it possible for the committee to consider the removal of permitted development rights for those properties so that nothing can be built further up to overlook the properties on Maria Meadows for those residents there? So a precaution necessary to preserve the character and tranquility of the area, and also to prevent piecemeal development that could undermine the quality of life enjoyed by the community. The previous speaker raised concerns about a management company looking after the estate on completion. Past experience in similar developments have shown that poor management can lead to spiralling costs and substandard services. I just want to note that Heaton Parish Council will not be responsible or have liability should that estate management company fail to deliver adequate services and its obligations on that estate. Any shortcomings, disputes or financial burdens resulting from mismanagement of communal areas remain for the appointed management entity and property owners. The council position must be made clear so to safeguard local taxpayers and avoid any further ambiguity regarding the duties of the council around that area. I'm hoping to come back and speak on the next phase as well, so thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Wellesley. Our next speaker is the applicant agent, Mr. Ian Hill. Five minutes.
Good morning. My name is Ian Hill from Bidwells, and thank you for the opportunity to speak this morning. The report provided by your officer, as well as today's presentation, have both been very comprehensive. Accordingly, I do not wish to repeat many of the points that have already been covered. However, I think it would be useful to highlight a few key points. The proposals seek to bring forward 58 homes following the approval of outline application in 2016. The consent actually allowed the development of up to 69 homes. The site, when combined with the neighbouring application, which will also be presented to you today, will provide a total of 122 homes, including 25 affordable units, a density of approximately 20 dwellings per hectare. As we've heard, the site is allocated in the newly adopted local plan, which, when combined with the adjacent site, is expected to deliver 133 homes. Accordingly, the local plan recognises that the development of the site is required to help meet the council's housing needs, including affordable housing. The neighbourhood plan also recognised that the site is key to meeting the needs of families and new homeowners in Heacham. The proposals before you have been arrived at following extensive consultation with officers and statutory consultees, such as the LLFA, the Environment Agency, Natural England and Norfolk County Council Highways, all of whom have no objection to the scheme. The applicant has taken time to ensure that the comments raised by consultees, including the public, have, where possible, been fully addressed. Like any greenfield development, the proposal will result in a degree of change to the appearance of the site and its surroundings. As a result, a comprehensive landscaping master plan has been prepared. The landscape master plan includes the retention and enhancement of established hedgerows and trees, as well as extensive new planting, ensuring that the impact of the development on the wider landscape is minimised. As you have seen from the images, the scheme seeks to provide a well-designed development which respects the local character. It includes measures to result in positive environmental outcomes and sustainable design, including air source heat pumps and photovoltaics. We've noted the comments made in relation to management companies. Again, as I'm sure a number of you will be aware, these do work successfully on certain schemes, and given that borough councils, town councils, or the parish council in this case, do not adopt them, it is the only resort left in many residential schemes. The project architect will provide further commentary on the design in due course, but to conclude, the proposal seeks to deliver a high quality development that will meet an identified need for housing on a site with outlined planning permission that is allocated in the local plan. In our view, there are no planning reasons as to why permission should not be granted. In light of the above, I hope you feel able to endorse the recommendation of your officer and support the scheme. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hill. Next speaker, Mr. Jerry Tate, the applicant architect. You two will have 5 minutes, Mr. Tate.
Okay. Hello, can you hear me? Fantastic. Hello, everybody. My name's Jerry Tate. I'm an architect from Tate & Co Architects. Thank you for this opportunity to talk to you about the design for these new homes for Heacham. This application is coming before you as two separate applications, but of course it's one place. So I'm just going to do a single speech today really about both sites, just to talk about how it all comes together. And there are 4 things which are going to create really good positive outcomes for Heacham in both of these sites as a sort of new community for Heacham. And I'd like to thank Kings Lynn and West Norfolk Planning Department for helping us embed these into the application during the process of the preparation of this design. So, what's it going to do? Well, the first thing it's going to do is it's going to integrate into the urban fabric of Heacham. So, as you've heard, there's one vehicular access from Cheney Hill, but we also have pedestrian access from Malthouse Crescent and pedestrian cycle access from Maria Meadows. And those routes go through the site so that it becomes integrated into Heacham. But whilst we have streets in the scheme, we've prioritised people, I have to say, balanced it with vehicular access. So they are segregated. We have good segregated footways and cycle and footways as well. But we've met all of the highways vehicle requirements, including a recent amendment to the southwestern parking court to remove one of those objections, the technical objection for the waste management. So it'll be integrated into Heacham. The second thing it'll do will be deliver a meaningful landscape for people and wildlife. So we've got more than the requirement. The requirement across both sites is 6,617 square metres of green space. We've got 8,300. But beyond the metrics, it'll be a linked green space for people and play, as well as significant new habitats for nature and biodiversity. And unlike the informal use of the field at the moment, it'll be truly inclusive, so it will be an accessible outdoor space. And I think the final thing to note on landscape is that we've put the landscape at the centre of the scheme. So quite often on contemporary developments, you see the landscapes all around the outside because, frankly, that's easier. We've created a green heart to this new scheme. The third thing it will do will create new homes that look and feel like part of Heacham. So we spent a lot of time looking at the homes in Heacham and understanding them so that we can create and continue the tradition, really, of gable-fronted homes with cast stone and brick walls and that distinctive brick coin detailing at the corners. The density of development at 20 units per hectare, that's in line with, if you measured Heacham, you'd get like 22 to 24. So it's not out of kilter with Heacham across both sites. And we've also, again, working with Kings Lynn and West Norfolk, which we really appreciate, developed a housing mix that meets the needs of the area, including that 20% affordable and, really importantly, 5 bungalows. And the fourth and final thing is that we'll create a new community in this location. So our client is a local landowner. He wants to do the right thing. He's got a long-term interest here. By creating streets that work for both people and cars, putting green space at the heart of the development, and creating clear neighbourhood clusters formed by traditional houses that are still super sustainable, we've designed a scheme that will allow space for this new community in Heacham to thrive. So in conclusion, this is a scheme that's been really carefully considered to create the most positive outcomes possible, both for the new residents of this development, but also for the existing surrounding community of Heacham. We urge members to please consent this scheme so that we can get on and deliver these much needed homes. Members, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Tate. Councillor Parish.
Ready to start? Right. I called these applications in years ago. You're aware of how long ago the outlines were first put in place. This leaflet here is an invitation for land at Cheney Hill, Heacham. It's the only public consultation that's ever been carried out. And the date on it is September 2014. Right. You've got 2 applications into Oban on the same site, and this first application originally exceeded the housing allocation on the allocated site for development. Other than that slight excess that they made, I actually supported this first application. It was an allocated site, it was an allocated number originally. and I supported the application. However, things move on, don't they? And there was another application subsequent to this one, which we'll be discussing later. The access, I'm well aware that the access has been agreed as outlined, but it was agreed a long time ago. And the single access now for 122 dwellings, say 250 cars, was considered not acceptable by planning committee at the time, but acceptable by a planning inspector, who said that the village traffic was light and there's a school crossing patrol near the entrance. But 9 years later, there's over 1,000 vehicles a day past that proposed entrance, and there isn't a crossing patrol. And with improvements on the A149 just up the top of Cheney Hill, with the new lights, we anticipate that the traffic flowing along that road will at least double, because people will avoid the Heacham traffic lights, lavender lights. So it's going to be a very, very busy road. NCC Highways gave no objection to the access based on 2016 data. Even Heacham has moved on since then. Now, points to consider. You've heard many from the speakers prior to me, the neighbours, the residents, and the chair of the Heacham Parish Council. One thing that wasn't mentioned was air source heat pumps. Yes, they're a feature of many houses now, but I think this feature used across such an estate is reasonably new. There will be 58 on this application, another 64, 122 in total. CSNN on the planning portal says the applicant will need to consider the cumulative impact, noise impact from the combined operation of all air source heat pumps on existing residents boarding the site. Now, I've raised this, and officers have said they think that condition 11 is sufficient to consider that. I don't think it is. I think condition 11 is the one typically put on air source heat pumps for an individual property to see whether the air source heat pump is located, not to interfere with next door, and so on. This is a cumulative impact. I'd like to know that's going to be sorted, other than installing them all and then finding that they're all too noisy. I do not want future headlines about Heacham, which would make a change, mind you, rather than sewage. I don't want future headlines to be the hum of Heacham. So is it going to cause an annoyance or not? And there needs to be a condition to ensure that it does not. And people worry about conditions and challenges to conditions. Well, I'm sure the residents of Heacham who boarded this site will be challenging the local planning authority if they suddenly find that they're listening to a hum all night during the winter. The other thing that's mentioned is the management company, and I raised this, and I was told that although we can, the planning committee can ensure there is a management company, I know from experience and other planning committee in the past that these management companies don't always do their job, and I wonder how we can ensure that it does. And I do wonder, are the people who have affordable homes, we've mentioned the 20% affordable homes, do they pay into the management company as well? Because the fees for such a company that's going to manage all areas of open space, the dog bins, likely the roads, which aren't, some of them aren't roads, they're shared space for vehicles and pedestrians. It's going to be a substantial fee at the end of the day. You know, it could approach a significant portion of whatever the mortgages are. So as it goes up and up year on year. So I'd like some consideration given to that or discussion about that. Construction management plan is on the outline. I feel that this should be copied across to this application in the sense that when this development takes place, local residents will know what the construction management plan is clearly, so that they can tell me or tell the Borough Council when things go wrong. When there's, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Parish. Natasha, any further comments following the speakers?
Yeah, I'll just go over a few of the points that were raised. So yeah, the access has been mentioned by most of the speakers, but as they've all alluded to, it is actually, it's not for debate that access has permission. It doesn't form part of this reserved matters application. So the access and all those off-site highway works, they are already kind of done and dusted, if you like, and we cannot alter that by this reserve matters application. Likewise, the number of vehicles and the amount of traffic on the roads would have been considered at the outline time, whilst it is acknowledged that things have changed over the period of time since the outline permission was granted. The application is still an allocation in the latest local plan, and therefore consideration of that amount of traffic is considered acceptable. In terms of removal of PD rights, we have to have very strong reasons for doing that. The distances with all the, between all the dwellings, there's at least 21 metres between every property. And it's not considered necessary to remove permitted development rights. If it's something you want to consider, you do also need to consider whether it's phase 1 or phase 2, because the gentleman that talked about it, I think it was more phase 2 development he was thinking about. So just to explain what I mean by that. Sorry, there's so many slides it takes. So when he was talking about Maria Meadows, you've got 2 properties here that side on to Maria Meadows, but it's these properties here that back onto Maria Meadows. Management company, it's quite right. Whilst we can ensure a management company is in place, we have no control over how that management company works. But I think management companies, they are certainly becoming more and more a thing as local authorities don't take on the adoption of public open spaces. It is something that's happening more and more. And in terms of air source heat pumps, I think the condition can look at the cumulative impacts. I don't imagine that you're going to get individual applications for air source heat pumps on each dwelling. Furthermore, we need to be mindful that there's a clear push towards air source heat pumps from the government, central government, and they are indeed permitted development in the large majority of cases also. I think that covers all the points that were raised.
Thank you, Natasha. Yeah, Councillor Stipend.
Yeah, I have a question first, please. Could you put up the affordable housing, please? Right, just explain the colours so people know what we're looking at first, please.
Sorry, the dots show the affordable housing units, so you can see how they're dispersed across the site. It's got 2 here, we've got the terrace of 4 here, and then we've got this group here. So in terms of the numbers, on a scheme of this size, you can't have a cluster of more than 6. So the greatest cluster we have got is 6, but in essence, they are separated by the loop road, if you like. So whilst they back onto each other, they do make a cluster, but it's not like 6 in a row. Let me just move this out of the way. And then you can see the index on the side here. So that explains what they are. So most of them are type E dwellings, which are 3-bed, 5-person semi-detached units. So that's these green ones. And then on this site here, we've got some type C dwellings, which is a terrace here, which are affordable. And then you've also got 2 type C here that are not affordable. So you can also see that whilst we've got affordable units that are type E, you can see immediately adjacent and around them, opposite them, you've also got those same type houses that shows that they're kind of not physically distinctive from market housing.
Right, I'll carry on. So there's 58 dwellings going into this site, but we have here on page 53, parking is to be provided. So we have 4 open market and 4 affordable out of the 12 that do not have any covered parking spaces, etc. I don't call that exactly a very fair spread for 12 affordable, 4 of them don't have anything. How are these meant to be perceived then as tenure blind if only 4 on the open market have this situation, but then we go down to affordable, there's 12 and already only 4 of them have less, they don't have the parking standards. Can you explain that, please? And is this really what you call tenure blind?
Well, in terms of that, you also have market houses immediately adjacent that don't have parking the same as the affordable. So, but nevertheless, you still have them in direct proximity.
So in other words, what you're saying is that particular corner is lower grade. If that's the case, if they don't have the parking, everybody needs a parking or a garage, because at the end of the day, most people use a garage, not every, but for added storage, etc. They're smaller houses, they've got families in them, they have pushchairs and prams and all the other things that make up a family life, and there is shortage of space. So to me, I would want to see this put in for them. You know, at the end of the day, they might be affordable housing, but it is still necessary in my view.
So as you can see here, we can see again the affordable units, and you can see the single garages that the majority of them have, with then the private parking space. So in terms of looking at this whole cluster of Type E dwellings, they all have exactly the same provision.
Would you please go down to the
these
next
ones.
lot? It's down the bottom.
These ones here?
Yeah.
Yes, no, they don't have any garages. No, they don't.
No, and that's what I'm saying. I would have preferred to have seen them with.
So again, yeah, they've got parking space, but again, so this property here, which is a market one, doesn't. This one here, which is a market, doesn't either.
It's what I'm saying, that this particular cluster in that corner doesn't have it. And it's a shame, because the whole site should be more or less the same to me, not just have that particular corner that excluded.
So in terms of excluding the garages, we removed some of the properties from this area to so that we didn't have so much against existing property. So it was kind of it was a layout impact as well.
I've got Councillor Bubb first and then Councillor Long.
Thank you. You may have heard me speak on this before. There's only one way into this estate. It's not wide enough. You've got a couple of delivery vehicles doing their job on the way in. That's a nice chicane created for somebody. I think the way in from Cheney Hill should be a bit wider. But I can fully understand the people who are in Maria Meadows not wanting the access to there other than cycles and pedestrians. However, it only takes a fairly small accident to block up the entrance. So I would like to see a condition that where the access from Maria Meadows is, it would be gated so it is possible to get an emergency vehicle through there if necessary.
Thank you.
Yeah, we can't do that, I'm afraid. Access is not up for debate. So access is already approved, and that does constitute access. So whilst we can put something in place in relation to the pedestrian and cycle access, there's no way that we can suggest now that this would be appropriate for emergency access. It hasn't been considered on that basis, and it can't be, because access is not a reserved matter. So if we were to consider Maria Meadows as an emergency route, which is what you're pertaining to, we can't do that. It hasn't been considered, and it can't be considered under this application.
So are any of the other accesses to the field, say, possible?
No,
to get
none of that. We cannot
in?
open the debate on access. Access is not up for debate. Access is not part of this application.
Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Bubb. Councillor Long.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. On the face of it, I think this looks quite a nice little development. The inclusion of all the open space sort of in a central zone, I think will create a nice ambience for those that live around. The integration to adjacent estates obviously is a good thing. have this slight query about this, the situation with regarding streetlights. I mean, I live in a village where there are 0 streetlights. And guess what? Everybody manages and crime is low. But I get that people buying a new home, moving on to an estate, they probably expect that they have a streetlight. And if it's going to be managed by a management company for a number of years, all well and good, and then it's everyone saying, well, oh no, it's not our responsibility. But when you sort of look towards what is provided in the rest of a village, and I know Heacham pretty well. I worked as a trainee insurance agent, helping cover the agents who lived in Heacham at the time. So I know, and I know that the village has expanded over the years. But the Bandee council tax equivalent for Heacham Parish Council 23-24 was over £80 per Bandee. We've got 122 homes coming in here. Let's just say, for easy maths, because I'm simple, that it's 100 Bandee equivalents, because that's easy maths. It might not be 100 Bandee equivalents, but that's that's £8,000. Am I right? £8,000 a year. £8,000 a year to maintain some street lights and actually provide what else? Because they provide the street lights for everybody else in Heacham. So I think, after 10 years, if the management company ceases to be, we've had £80,000 in the bank towards maybe refurbishing them. So a little bit of a red herring, and you sort of wonder what parish councils are responsible for, physically are responsible for, and if they provide streetlights everywhere else, then they perhaps ought to think about their long-term future of these. But is that reason to turn this down? No, I think it's a nice little development and I'll be supporting it, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Long. Councillor, was your hand up just for the TV? Yeah, Councillor Barclay.
I just want to say what a very well considered plan. I think it looks fantastic. A lot of good work's gone in between the architect and the officers, etc. I appreciate the access issue, but with regard to street lights, I mean, I totally agree with what Councillor Long has said. That there's a huge maintenance issue there. But I mean, if you want to live in the rural community, I frankly don't think you should expect streetlights. If you want streetlights, go and live in a town. With garages, I mean, I don't have a garage, but I don't really see an issue with that with respect to you, Councillor Spikings. I mean, those are the points I just wanted to make. I just think it's like a very good plan and I will back it.
Councillor Dwelling.
Thank you, Chair. My first question is to do with Anglian Water's no objection and their calculation. I would just like clarification because we have going forward from Anglian Water the edict that Heacham will have insufficient capacity and that there is no work planned for the water recycling facility, and therefore they would recommend refusal going forward. So I think it is important for some form of assurance that the calculations that they have made and that you refer to magically just match up to existing capacity, please. And I must admit, I'm a little bit intrigued because of a High Court ruling for Sizewell C that suggested that future capacity would scupper the planning system, or words to that effect. I won't say it exactly. So I'm odd with the directions for that, and I would just like the clarification.
The other point that was made, which I have a dislike of unadopted roads because they place a burden on householders, potentially unnecessarily. It adds costs to a management company. It makes it harder to maintain the desirability of an estate, especially if residents are at odds with each other over the cost of maintaining these unadopted roads. There seems to be quite a significant number of houses reliant on the unadopted road, which I assume is the dark brown through the middle of the site. So if we can have clarification on that as well, please. And with regards to streetlights, I would say that for me, the weighting is on safety because modern LED streetlights reduce are directional, so you don't have that glow that the older sodium street lamps caused, and equally, so you reduce light pollution, and they have relatively low maintenance requirements. So potentially, we should be looking if there are concerns about the number of lights, then perhaps we should be looking to make sure there are sufficient for pedestrians to be safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Diwali. Natasha, any further comment?
Yeah. Oh, excuse me. So Anglia Water capacity calculations, when they made those calculations, they included these two developments because they benefited from outline consent. So not only did they, so in that sense, they have actually calculated for 133 dwellings rather than 122 that are now proposed. In terms of the roads not being adopted, again, we can't make the county council adopt roads. So the alternative is a management company. And, you know, like I said previously as well, that's a lot of the ways things are going. So when if people don't want to buy these houses where they have to sign up for a management company, then they won't buy one of the houses where they have to sign up for a management company. It's really as simple as that. In terms of street lighting, there is no requirement for street lighting, but I would like to point out that the applicants actually included street lighting, and they removed the street lighting from this proposal because of an objection by the parish council. So that's why street lighting was removed. However, it doesn't have to be provided. That is the point. So thank you.
Could I briefly, before I go to Councillor De Winton, can I come back on that? Because obviously street lighting, if we install it, something we control with low source LEDs and stuff. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, some years ago, the county council stopped insisting on street lights, and most new estates, I'd say now, don't have them. I mean, people install their own lighting, and obviously there's the costs. Who pays for the street lighting going forward? So county would only ask for it where there's a safety issue. So you'll get it around a roundabout or a junction where they feel that's the case, but otherwise they won't require it. And it's a funny one, really. Some people want it, and some people don't want it. Some people prefer dark skies, and some people don't. So it's really is it's one of those.
Councillor De Winton.
Thank you. A lot of my points have actually been already answered. Thank you. So basically, the roads will not be adopted, as I understand it, and the management company will set in. Well, the market will determine whether that's an acceptable package, because people either will or won't buy the houses. So that will be determined by the market. Obviously, if a management company is set up from the beginning, people will get into the habit of paying their sub. The one thing which did occur to me is how would the social housing fit in with the management company fee? Would that be part of their rent? Although obviously, I don't know if you can answer that, but it's something which had actually occurred to me, how that works. Would it be part of their rent? Would it be on top of their rent? But I assume, bearing in mind some of the comments from the parish council, that two things. One, this development would, the developer be paying SIL? No. That's interesting. Thank you very much. I missed that one last night. And also, I assume they'll be paying council tax. I got that one, Hannah. So therefore, they will be making a contribution to their community and therefore should receive the benefits of that community accordingly. Thank you very much.
Thank you, councillor De Winton. I believe Natasha would like to make further clarifications around the adoption of the road.
Yeah, so in relation to adopted and non-adopted roads, the main route, so the way the two schemes have been developed is that they are, well, phase one could come forward without phase two. So in terms of adoption of roads, you'll see that there is a main loop road that will provide access throughout phase one that would be extended into phase two if that was granted permission. They would be adopted. The routes that wouldn't be, we've got this route here, which is a shared route. This bit here, which wouldn't be, and then on phase two, which we'll look at later, there's also a shared street that wouldn't be adopted. So that's just to confirm that some parts are going to be adopted by it. Some roads will be adopted. It's not all that wouldn't be. In terms of the affordable housing, it would be the housing association itself that deals with how their tenants pay or whether they are. So to be honest, I don't know how that works, but it would be for the housing association. So whilst SIL, this isn't SIL liable because the outline consent was prior to SIL, what we have got on this that we don't have any longer because SIL took over, there are education and library contributions. So you've got payment in a different manner. Yeah.
Thank you
for tying that one up.
Any further comment, councillor Ives?
Sorry, just some small points. Is there a children's play area included in this development? There is?
Yes, so there's two actually. So in amongst this open space, we've got a leap and a lap. Now one is called a local equipped area of play and one is a local area of play. And they're generally for different age groups of children really. In terms of the details, whilst details were provided, the public open space or the open space element is contained within section 106. So whilst we've given due regard to those plans, they haven't been conditioned because they are controlled by the section 106. But yes, there are actually two areas of play in this site, and then there's one further down in phase two, looking at the wider scheme.
Excellent, thanks. The second question is really, we seem to move from a sort of pepper pot policy for affordable housing to a sort of a grouping policy of 6. Is that our policy these days?
No, there's always been a cluster. So the pepper potting is always allowed for clustering, and you can have maximum clusters depending on the site of the size of a scheme. So this scheme has been taken as the two separate parts. If it was taken as a whole, you could have larger clusters, but we've always been able to have clusters of affordable houses. In this instance, the maximum cluster is 6. So we do have a maximum cluster. But like I previously alluded to, actually, when you see it on the ground, they are separated, you know, and on the outer edges of that loop road.
Okay, and finally, I mean, Heacham is, oh, don't shoot me down, but it's probably more of a retirement community than many other communities in Norfolk. I said, try to be very careful what I said. And yet we only have 5 bungalows. Yeah, whatever. And I just know there are only 5 bungalows, which, you know, does strike me as a little bit on the low side.
There's no policy in the local plan or the neighbourhood plan that requires bungalows. And therefore, you know, the fact that they've given us bungalows, yes, there aren't that many, but they don't actually have to provide us with any. And in regard to the housing mix, Heacham, the Heacham neighbourhood plan has a housing mix requirement, and it fully accords with that.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you, councillor Ives. I've got councillor Spikins and councillor Linton.
I think you'll find that bungalows take up more space to build, so that could be another thing. It's the land use. And with regard to the play equipment, who pays for the maintenance, repair and renewal of this, please?
That will be the management and maintenance company, yeah.
Which I know from my own experience can be quite costly.
Thank you. Councillor Linton.
Thank you, Chair. We heard from the first speaker concerns about health and safety with the mix of pedestrian and vehicles and things. Can we just hear that those concerns are addressed?
Well, so the main concern was where you've got roads that don't have footpaths. So these are roads that are called shared streets. And that is their purpose. So they are, again, a tried and tested and a new way forward. So highways have fully considered the proposal, and there are no health and safety highways conflict between, it's a conflict that they consider. Because there is the conflict, you are aware of the conflict, if that makes sense. You kind of prepare for it. You haven't got footpaths, so you know you've got to be more careful, if you like. But it is a tried and tested way forward, and these shared routes are something that, yeah, you're probably going to see a lot more of, to be fair.
So do they have speed restrictions on them?
No, so what we have mostly, as you can see on this one, what they try and do, what all highways try and do, not just on these shared routes, is they try and build in by curves and the lack of straight lines, so that you don't have to have other sources of speed prevention. And where a road is slightly longer, so as you can see here, we've got a bump because this is considered to be a bit longer, but certainly on this one, we have got the curve. That in itself would mean that you can't speed. So they're trying to get everything to 20 miles an hour, and it's all worked out on the, you know, the curves and everything. And again, when we get to phase 2, you'll see that that road is slightly longer. So they do have a speed bump in that one.
Thank you. Can I have a clarification as well? In regards to the only objection in this application was from the Waste Department. I think I heard right the speaker, they've corrected that. Did I hear correctly?
Yes, so the waste officer did not remove the objection, but the reason for their objection has been removed. So the reason for objection was here, and the the radius, and so they've shown that a dust cart can go in and a Ford Go reverse come out. So actually, whilst Waste didn't remove their objection, their reason for objection is removed.
Thank you. Councillor Bubb, and then I've got Councillor Devlin-Pally.
Thank you. I've heard just what you said about the unadopted roads and the humps and wiggles, but as far as I'm aware, unless you know different, you cannot legally enforce a speed limit on an unadopted road.
I don't know, but I think it would be quite difficult to go more than 20 on that road, to be fair. It's not very long, and it has got a big bend in it.
Councillor Devlin-Pally.
Thank you, Chair. It's probably not a material consideration, but just my understanding, and I'm sure the public are interested as well. Who are the target who are going to buy these homes? And if it's families with children, can the school cope with an influx of children who will come to the area? And also, are there other amenities like shops and things like that which would support this number of residents?
Okay, so this is Heacham. So this would go back to the site being an allocated site in the neighbourhood plan. So when something's allocated like that, it's generally allocated, the size of it, depending on the tier that settlement is. Now, Heacham is a very large settlement. It has extensive services and facilities. And yeah, in terms of school places, etc., that would have all been considered at the outline and the allocation stage.
Any other members wishing to speak? So the recommendation is to approve. There's been quite an extensive, and that would include the new condition as outlined in like Rep's prior to completion of any dwelling, hereby permit details of measurements to prevent motorised vehicles accessing a pedestrian cycle path link between the site and Miriam Meadows to the east of the site shall be submitted and approved in writing by the local planning authority. Measures shall take place prior to the first occupation of any dwelling hereby permitted and shall thereafter be maintained and retained as installed. So the officer's recommendation was to approve with the addition of that condition. So we will take it to the vote.
Councillor Noter,
For.
Councillor Berkeley,
For.
Councillor Blunt,
For.
Councillor Bone,
For.
Councillor Bubb,
For.
Councillor Devi Parley, Councillor Everett,
For.
Councillor Linton,
For.
Councillor Rose,
For.
Councillor Ives, Councillor Spikings,
Okay.
Councillor Spikings,
Abstain.
Councillor Jawali,
For.
Councillor De Winton,
For.
Councillor Kirk,
For.
and Councillor Long.
For.
Yeah, that was carried 14 votes for, 1 abstention.
Okay. Thank you. So we move on to the next application, phase 2 of this, again, in Heacham. It's again a reverse maps of 64 dwellings, and Natasha's again presenting this item. So again, there's a number of speakers on this. So Natasha, would you like to present phase 2, please?
Yep. Okay, so this application seeks reserved matters approval, that's scale, appearance, layout and landscaping for 64 dwellings and associated infrastructure following the grant of outline consent for the same, that is 64 dwellings and associated infrastructure. The site comprises the remaining 2.4 hectares of the overall 6 hectare allocation. So out of the 64 dwellings, there are 13 affordable units. As you can see, they are again marked with red dots on this plan. Overall, we've got 28 detached properties, 4 linked detached properties, 26 semi-detached properties, 1 building containing 4 one-bed units, and 2 bungalows, both of which are affordable. This can be further broken down into 4 one-bed units, that's the 4 affordable, 9 two-bed units, 35 three-bed units, 16 four-bed units. The density of development of this site is 25.6, whilst the density of the 2 combined is 20 dwellings per hectare. And again, for comparison, Maria Meadows is 16.2 and Benstead Close is 39.7. In terms of boundary treatments, they are the same as on the previous scheme, although what we have down here is additional hedging that we didn't have on the other property, on the other scheme, where they abutted neighbouring dwellings. You will see that one of the conditions that's been added to this was to ensure that the hedge is on the outside of any fence rather than the inside, to protect or to give that countryside edge. In this one, we have 1,383 metres of public open space, and it includes a local area of play down here. In terms of the dwellings themselves, the materials are the same. So we've got a mixture of red brick, red pan tiles. Again, we've got quite simple proposals with brick coins. And looking at these units, we've got, so sorry about that. So this is the block of 4 one-bed units. This is one of the types that we've also got market and affordable. So again, they look exactly the same. The difference is internal, and that the market have en suites and the affordable don't. These are the two bungalows, both of which are affordable. And this is one of the larger units on site. This again shows the parking and the space, the properties that have just parking spaces, those with garages. And again, we've got visitor parking spaces, which again is around the area of open space. And now, sorry, just bear with me one moment. So in terms of the outline consent, so on this one was still liable. So you don't have the library and the education contributions. You've got open space, on-site affordable housing, SUDS, habitat regulations, which again has been upped during the determination or during the consideration of this application. So that has gone up from £50 per dwelling to £304.17, I believe it is. So outline consent includes conditions covering construction, drainage, management, maintenance of the roads, highway safety, off-site highway improvement works, surface water drainage, outdoor lighting, amenity such as dust suppression, so construction management, archaeology, landscaping, landscape management, trees, fire hydrants, ecology, and contamination. So again, as with the other one, the issues we're looking at are all the reserved matters excluding access, which has already been permitted. Key issues are as outlined on page 70. Recommendation is to approve this application, and the recommendation was if the previous application was refused, to refuse this application, because obviously you get to this one via the other one. So in terms of looking at the photographs, so again, we're looking along Maria Meadows. So you'll remember from the previous presentation, we started looking at these properties. Now we look at them in more detail because this phase is the phase that backs onto those properties, rather than just on the side of the two on the end. Oh, sorry about that. So there we go. We're looking down along those properties from Maria Meadows. And now we're turning the corner and looking along properties on School Road, which we did look at previously on the other presentation. And then we've got agricultural buildings on School Road, and School Road changes as it goes down to a byway rather than a surfaced highway. They're agricultural buildings off there. Now we're looking back across the phase 2 sites. So we're looking back across those Maria Meadow properties, but we're also looking at those properties that back onto Benstead Close. Again, we've got Benstead Close. This is really looking right across towards Cheney Hill, which you obviously can't see. We've got the agricultural building there that it's on the site currently, and then further round to properties on Cheney Hill. And again, back. Oh, sorry, that went and came back. But looking in the other direction, so Maria Meadows and School Road and the agricultural buildings. And again, just some long views here. This is looking at the agricultural buildings on School Road. So the site lies over here. Again, the agricultural buildings, and we're looking up to on School Road, and you can just see the properties here on Maria Meadows. Thank you.
Thank you, Natasha. We have a number of speakers on this phase as well. So our first speaker is Sally Gramner. Thank you. You have 5 minutes and press the right button, please.
Thank you for the opportunity to make a last-ditch effort to reduce the impact of this development on our property and lives. I live on Maria Meadows in one of the houses that backs onto phase 2 of the development, and unfortunately, one of the two most affected by overshadowing. The original shadow survey was not fit for purpose, and a more robust one conducted. This survey has clearly shown a negative impact on all properties in Maria Meadows, not just on gardens, but living rooms as well, for at least 9 months of the year. However, the developers deem that as the proposed buildings are set at the minimum legal distance of 21 metres between the properties, we seem to be just collateral damage in their grand scheme. Taking their phrase interdevelopmental relationships into consideration, the obvious response would be to build bungalows next to impacted properties. But, and I quote, the applicants chose not to change these dwellings to single-storey units. Presumably, these give less profit. There are currently only 2 bungalows in this phase of the development. Our already darkened homes could be further impacted if the new homeowners decide to extend their properties as they are entitled to do. I understand that a condition could be imposed under permitted development rights to stop this from happening, and I ask that this should at least be placed on houses neighbouring existing properties, which are the minimum legal distance apart. Privacy is also of great concern, with bedroom windows having direct sight into our garden, living and bedrooms, and exacerbated by the very close proximity of the new builds. As a big concession, Juliet balconies were removed after objection from the original designs. This was to reduce perception of being overlooked. I think it is more fact than perception. The sheer density of the proposal leaves little or no room for manoeuvre, cramming as many properties with small gardens as possible onto the site. Air source heat pumps are proposed for all the properties, but there is no data on the cumulative noise impact of some 120 pumps, only individual assessment. I understand the councillors have now imposed a condition on the pedestrian access to Maria Meadows, for which I am very grateful. This was of great concern to us and our neighbours, as the route is shown to be nearly 3 metres wide, easily big enough for any vehicle to get through. Barriers will need to be placed for the safety of all pedestrians, especially young children using the road to get to the infant school. All visitors and delivery drivers to Maria Meadows use the hammerhead to turn, reversing directly into the exit from the development where there is no defined footpath. Barriers would also prevent motorbikes and electric cycles and scooters from using it as a cut-through. Hopefully, all restrictive measures will be thoroughly maintained. It has taken nearly 10 years to reach this point, and in all this time, there has been no public consultation or opportunity to meet with the developers. The plans have been developed to the letter of the law, but with no thought or consideration to the impact on neighbours or the wider village. The mountain of documentation has made it extremely difficult for anyone without knowledge of planning or architectural terms to understand exactly what is happening, and genuine concerns and objections swept aside in glib replies and legal jargon. The whole process has left me with no faith that any local knowledge or opinion has been sought or listened to in the bid for maximum profit from every inch of land. I would therefore ask that consent for these plans is refused until all genuine concerns regarding proximity, density, noise and access are fully and properly addressed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Cranmer. Our next speaker is Mr. Dean Rawnsley.
Thank you once again. Most of what I want to speak about has been covered by the previous speakers and by debate around the table. But I would like to clear one thing up, and that the parish council did not object to street lighting. What the parish council said was that the street lighting should match what we currently have in the village, which is LED lighting, and it goes off after midnight. It reduces after midnight by 50%. So that if in future the parish council wanted to adopt the street lighting, it would be exactly the same as it was around the village. So there was no objection. That was one of our criteria. So basically, I think that's all I've got to say, because everything else seems to have been covered. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Rawnsley. Mr. Ian Hill?
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. The scheme is intrinsically linked with the land to the west, which members have just given consideration to. As we've heard, it has been designed in a coordinated and holistic manner. So I think on that basis, I don't think there's any need for me to repeat many of the points that have already been made, otherwise than to reiterate the comment that we can't see any planning reason as to why consent should not be granted, and we'd like to endorse the recommendation of the officer. We hope you're able to do so and support the proposals. I'll now hand back to the project architect to just pick up some of the more detailed questions that have been raised by other speakers already. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hill. Mr. Tate?
Hello, members again. I don't want to take up too much of your time, and I won't go through all the design points again, but I would stress that this has been, although it happens to be coming to you as two separate applications, it is one thing. It's been designed as one thing, and it works together as one thing. I understand that this can be, I understand that it's coming to you as two separate things, but I would really, really emphasize that. Just to pick up on some points, in terms of the Maria Meadows, we did do a full daylight and sunlight analysis. I'm sure members have read that. It's by a company called MES. And that did demonstrate that all of these proposals are in line with planning guidance in that they don't breach any of that. So that's something. In terms of bungalows, just to touch on that point, we're not anti-bungalows at all. They're exceptionally popular, by the way, when you try to sell them, just to let people know that in terms of money, but they are inefficient use of land, just to be totally upfront. So it's really hard for us to justify including more bungalows on this scheme because it's an inefficient use of an allocated site. And the last thing I'll just touch on, air source heat pumps. So we now use air source heat pumps across all of our schemes. It's what the government is really pushing for because it's about electrification. So essentially, our grid is decarbonising, and so the government is pushing us to use air source heat pumps. That condition will ensure that all of those air source heat pumps work within the acoustic ranges specified, basically. So they will be controlled. But it is really important, if we want to tap into the decarbonisation of our grid that's happening, that these new houses use an electric-based system. And I would also emphasise they're going to be extremely energy-efficient houses. The U values in the energy report, if you see, are really low. I mean, they're going to be great houses. I think that's covered up most of the points. I'm probably not allowed to take questions, but I would be happy to if I was. No? Okay. All right.
Councillor Parish. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Starting. First of all, I'd like to thank Councillor Bubb for raising the issue of the single access. On that invitation that I...
Actually, to start again.
Start again.
Once we get the timer right.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Yeah. First of all, I'd like to thank Councillor Bubb for raising the issue of the single access and whether there's an emergency access available. In this invitation, which I showed you, that it says, access is taken off Cheney Hill to the west. A secondary pedestrian and emergency vehicle only access is off Malthouse Crescent to the north. And that has been removed since as years have gone by. So there was an emergency access that has been taken out. It couldn't be. The pedestrian access has now been outlined because of the nature that's been described by the neighbour who lives there. It's just impossible to get the vehicle through there anyway. But there was an emergency access that has been removed. Now, this application is the one that the Planning Committee objected to on the basis of access and traffic and overdevelopment of the village. And the developer saw an opportunity because the allocated site was twice the area needed for the actual housing allocation. A planning inspector for an adjacent application said the total allocated capacity has been permitted on approximately half the allocated site area. This error and the perceived abuse of a planned approach to housing allocations was and remains a source of community dissatisfaction with the planning authority. After years of delay, the application is now before you. It's important that community concerns that can be addressed are, and the first speaker was excellent in explaining what those community concerns were. This path isn't as pretty as the first one you saw, and the space between and around houses may appear at least adequate, but permitted development rights, as has been mentioned, could swiftly cause it to degenerate, as some owners extend in almost all directions, including up. You can now stick a third story on your house without bothering with coming to here. Whilst it may not be desirable to remove such rights indiscriminately, for those properties closest to existing residences, removal of such rights would reduce public concern. And it's also been mentioned that bungalows would have been a better option. And the last speaker said that they do sell better, but it's not a good use of the land. Well, good use of the land for who, quite honestly. There are many bungalows in Heacham, and it's a good use of land as far as the purchasers are concerned. Now, I won't backslid over anything else. I did support the first application when it first came out. I didn't support this one, and neither did the parish council, neither did the community, and neither did the planning committee. But it's history now because it was given outline permission via the man from Bristol, the planning inspector. There's one issue which I have raised in writing, but hasn't been mentioned here, that close to this site, there are business activities. There's a coal yard, which also cuts an awful lot of logs, and an agricultural business for animal feed and fattening cattle. I have raised this matter several times with officers. When I raised this in writing, officers have said they've never had any complaints about these businesses. Well, they haven't had any complaints about existing residents because we all know the people who operate the businesses and well aware that they're established businesses within the village of industrial nature or of a farming nature. It doesn't stop new residents who suddenly arrive in their brand new spanking house and find that on a Saturday they've got 4 hours of log cutting coming over the back fence. It's not immediately adjacent, but it's close to. I live further away. I'm not very far from here. I walk on this site every day with the dog. I live further away than the closest houses to those businesses, and I hear the noise. I don't complain because I know the operators. I'm part of the village, and it's business. It's the village business. I just wonder why there's been no thought about how noise attenuation measures could be placed on houses relatively close to those business operations. That's all. And then I'll finish there. Thank you very much. I did have pictures, but you've seen some pictures. You don't need any more.
Thank you, Councillor Parish. Okay, Natasha, is there any further comments following the speakers?
Yeah, so we just go back to the first speaker, the lady who lives on Maria Meadows, and the concern about the 21 metres and the removal of PD rights, etc. So when we just considered the last application, these properties here that are to the south of the properties on Benstead Close, the distance is again 21 metres, so a relationship considered acceptable, as is this relationship. 21 metres is the standard, or basically it's not a legal figure. Where we take the 21 metres from is we had an ombudsman decision some years ago, and it was the ombudsman that said really you should be having 21 metres between habitable windows. So we have that across both sites. So in terms of overlooking, and when we talked about the Juliet balconies and the perception of overlooking from Juliet balconies is because actually the overlooking generally from a Juliet balcony is very similar to a window unless you sit on the floor in front of the Juliet balcony. when you've got a Juliet balcony, there is a greater perception of being overlooked, but actually the area you look out of is the same area that a window would be. So when we talk about perception of overlooking from a Juliet balcony, it is actually that you perceive you're being overlooked greater than from a normal window, when realistically you're probably not. Notwithstanding that, they have been removed. Air source heat pumps we've previously covered. So going on to Councillor Parish, the emergency access, again, there wasn't one approved as part of the outline. There was no emergency access. So whilst they tried to put one in on the reserved matters, they had to remove it because you can't do that by the reserved matters. And in relation to, in relation to the impact on these properties from existing businesses down on School Road, we did speak with CSNN because actually you have got some houses that are directly opposite to those businesses, one of them being a coal yard, and they've had no objection. So I think it's not quite correct for Councillor Parish to say that people don't object if they're if it's an existing use. I think people would object if it was if they were. Yeah, in principle, the location would have been considered anyway. But we did double check, and there have been no objections to CSNN. So we consider that relationship is acceptable. I think that covers all of those points. Thank you.
Thank you, Natasha. Before I open to members, I've just got a little bit of concern myself. If we go back to the actual pepper potting of this part of the phase, it all seems on the previous phase it was clustered, but we're back to back. Is there any reason they're more or less the whole street scene and then a couple of corners? Is there any reason for that?
Again, in terms of our policy, the clustering is fully compliant with our pepper potting policy. There are no clusters greater than 6, which is again what you would have to do in this area. So whilst it's perhaps not as pepper potted as the previous, it still is compliant.
Okay, thank you, Natasha. Councillor. Okay, Councillor Spikens.
I listened very carefully to the speakers, and the First Lady spoke about the impact of these particular dwellings, what was going to happen to her with her house and the overshadowing. So looking at the basis of what I heard on page 84 and 85, I'd just like to have a few questions answered, please. Because it states at the very bottom, the main area of concern in relation to overshadowing is the impact on the 2 westernmost properties in Mainly Meadows, number 17 and number 15, that could be impacted by both 1 and 2. And then it talks about the months that it goes through, and we talk about a boundary fence. Is a boundary fence 1.8 or 2 metres?
You can have up to 2 metres under permitted development.
Right, thank you. So it says December. Impacts will be habitable windows throughout the day. March, limited overshadowing, late afternoon to a few, with greater impacts on habitable rooms in the late afternoon to the majority. June, no material. September, limited overshadowing, late afternoon to a few, greater impacts on habitable rooms in the late afternoon, early evening to the majority of the properties. This shows there would be varying degrees of overshadowing to a number of properties on Mainly Meadows other than the summer months. Obviously, we talk about the 21 metres between properties being standard. While there is an element of buyer beware, not everybody who comes along to buy knows about these things, especially, you get first time, you get different people. You don't always know the questions to get the answers, but you're always expected to know them, and it's too late when you've bought it and you realise it, because you usually come on in the day, not in the evening. And therefore it says, it is therefore considered in terms of amenity, there's going to be some disamenity. But that's all right because that's buyer beware. But is this really the right way when you have a house that you've lived in? And I know you get new properties built, you don't have a right to everything, but some of them to habitable rooms can make a big difference to your lifestyle. So I would question, could we see the diagrams that show this disamenity, please?
Yeah, I can pull those up for you, but like I just said, I must reiterate that the relationships here are no different to the relationships here that we've considered are acceptable.
That's what I'm reading in this report, a great big page, so I'm just asking the question.
Yeah, no, that's fine. And in terms of buyer beware is not in relation to the Maria Meadows ones. Buyer beware would be in relation to if you are buying a property, not if you're already living in a property. So that's more to do with the interdevelopment relationships. But yeah, if you bear with me. I will try and share this document with you. Okay. So this shows what we were most concerned about were the two end properties because they would be affected by phases 1 and phases 2. Yeah, they're the two. So that's why we saw this, and you'll see why we didn't put it on the presentation because basically it's quite large. So these were the two properties in question that we were most concerned about. Now, what these show are the different periods of time. So this is in December, and this is showing Maria Meadows itself. So this is showing already the shadows cast, or what could be cast by 2 metre boundary and the existing dwellings. Then what you're looking at with the new development is anything additional that is showing in the red area. So you can see in this, for example, the majority of the property garden is already overshadowed at this time, at this period, by itself or its own, or what could be permitted development boundaries. And then there are small areas that are also impacted by the development. And that's how this whole document works. It's showing existing and proposed. So then for a period of time here in the morning, you've got some shadows cast in the gardens by the new properties on the existing, and again on there, and that's what's broken down in that report, saying what areas are. But what you've got to remember is the shadows are passing as you know, it's not a static image, if that makes sense. So that's showing, we're still looking at December, so all the different times, and obviously when the shadows are longer in those months. So you can see again the shadows cast by the existing properties on Maria Meadows. So that's something that we really need to consider when we're looking at this 21 metre rule, is that the vast majority of developments are going to be this close to each other, the new development. So now we're looking at March, where the sun is obviously higher and there's very little. Yeah.
Late afternoon.
Yeah, well, we'll get to late afternoon. So that's the problem with this document because it's so long. So yeah, we just have to work our way through it. So we're still in March. No, this is March. So we're 2 o'clock in March. So now you can see this is 3 o'clock in March. So literally shadows clipping the edge. Then at 4 o'clock, just again, the edge of the rear. And then as the shadows cast, they are longer then, and then it's night time. Basically, the dark ones are just all in shadow. Now we're looking at June. And again, the same process. So where there's already shadow, obviously it's not having any greater impact from the proposed development. It's where the development itself casts its own and separate shadow.
Plus the sun's high in the sky.
Again, yes. Yeah, well, like I say, we've got to get to it. This is why I didn't put it on there, because there's like oodles of. Right, where are we now? Yeah, here we go. So this is September. So this is early morning. Shadows starting to appear. And right, so here we go. The shadow's starting to appear here. This is 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And then we have the early evening, so 5 o'clock in the afternoon.
Sasha, any questions from them? Councillor Long.
Can I just say that's one of the most comprehensive shadow studies that I've seen, and I've seen them obviously at County Hall for new school buildings, which are normally much taller than residential properties, and we can see that there, you know, there's justification in I think what the lady who spoke said. However, I think the mitigation and that study does show that it's limited in what's happening, and you know, I can quite see the point that you might say, well, the easiest way to solve it is to put bungalows, but the back boundary fences are creating as much of the problem when the sun is low, as you know, if the sun's low, a 2-metre fence will nearly block the light from the whole house. But very interesting. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rives.
Thank you. Just returning to the point of emergency exits, has any opinion been solicited from the fire brigade or police service or anything like that about emergency exits? It's quite a large estate when phase 1 and phase 2
I didn't
are
hear what
fully
you said.
operational.
Could you repeat the question, Councillor Rives?
Okay, the question was, have we had any external sort of opinion from the police or the fire brigade about the absence of an emergency exit, given this is going to be quite a large estate when it's finished with over 120 houses on it?
No, they've been consulted and neither object. So both parts, so the fire and the architectural, police architectural officer. So yes, they were both consulted, they both made comments, but there's been no objection to the single access.
Okay, thank you.
So Dwelling.
Thank you, Chair. Again, it's down to the unadopted road. There seems to be an awful lot of houses. Is it 17? Can you confirm the numbers on that front onto the unadopted road? How many houses, and at what level do you consider the number of houses to be unacceptable? I know some authorities, planning authorities, are quite stringent on the number.
No, like I've said, the Highways Authority raised no objection at all to the shared surface, the number of properties being accessed from that shared surface. There's no objection at all in terms of highway safety or pedestrian and vehicular conflict. In terms of the numbers, I'll just have to count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 16 houses, I think. Well, no, actually that one, the access comes here. So 15 houses directly are served by that route.
Okay, thank you. So you are guided purely by highways?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Devlin.
Thank you, Chair. I just wondered, is there going to be anything to stop future homeowners from extending their properties?
No, that's the question that was asked on the previous one and this one. No, that we've got no reason to remove PD rights.
So the officer's recommendation is for approval. So Kathy, will you take it?
Councillor Anota,
Four.
Councillor Berkeley,
Four.
Councillor Blunt,
Four.
Councillor Bone,
4.
Councillor Bubb,
Four.
Councillor Devi Parley. 4. Councillor Everett,
4.
Councillor Linton,
4.
Councillor Rose,
4.
Councillor Ives,
4.
Councillor Spikings,
4.
Councillor De Wally,
4.
Councillor De Winton,
4.
Councillor Kirk,
4.
and Councillor Long.
4 as well.
Yeah, that was carried unanimously. Thank you.
Okay. It is coming up to our 3 hours, but it's now 12:25, so I'm suggesting we have a 10-minute comfort break. Got no lunch. I'd expected it to go quicker. And then we'll come back.
10 minutes in.
10 minutes. 75-2, can members return to the seats?
And that.
Yeah, Gillian's gone, I think.
Oh, is he gone?
Yeah. Councillor Kirk is gone, I believe, so.
John Barton.
Yeah.
Where is he? Is he gone? John Barton's gone.
Councillor Barclay is gone as well, so we can proceed. Before we proceed, we do have 20 minutes left on our session, but I'd like to declare it all declared before we start the debate. We'll become, apart from the 20 minutes we've got coming up to our 3 hours, our members happy to carry on over that to get this application done. Yep, agreed. Perfect. So we are going to the application. It's a retrospective, but it's a full application for a car park at Great Massingham. It was called in by Councillor Beales as page 101 of your agenda pack, and Lucy will be presenting the item.
Thank you, Chair. This application seeks full planning permission for the retention of an overflow car park to be utilised in association with the Dabbling Duck Public House in Great Massingham. Temporary consent was granted in February of 2024 for a 1-year period for the car park to operate. This application has been submitted following the cease of that use in order to gain full planning permission permanently for a similar scheme. The landscaping details have been amended since that previous consent, which are shown on this plan. You can see on the right-hand side here, so the green line here is timber posts, and then the purple, which is just on the outside of that, is the fire breaks. That's 2 metre wide mud or soil strip to form the fire break. And then on the outside of that, the orange line is proposed wildflower planting, which is sought to define the boundary of the site a bit more clearly. As you can see here, the proposed parking spaces is 30 parking spaces. We haven't requested that those are demarcated anyway on recommendation of the Conservation Officer to limit the paraphernalia associated, the physical works associated with the land, to keep it a bit more soft in the landscape given the conservation area boundary, which runs along the back of the properties on Abbey Road and loops up towards Abbey Fields to the north. The application is recommended for approval, subject to conditions relating to the management plan, which has been submitted and is available on the online file. That controls issues such as fire risk, keeping the grass short, keeping the fire break clear of any litter and any planting. And then also there's conditions relating to the wildflower planting itself. These are the proposed photos. This is the existing gateway. So this is from the existing car park within the Blue Land. This is the car park as existing. And then these are the houses, so that's looking south, along the south boundary of the car park. And again. And then these are the properties, Abbey Fields to the north. And then this is looking back to the car park, so these are existing rooms. And then the pub is further behind those. And then these are photos of the green where you can see the existing parking, which isn't restricted. And again, the access to the car park is to the right here and to the left here, which you can't quite see. The key issues are on page 103 of your agendas, and a better location plan which shows the siting around the countryside is on page 101. There are late representations for this item, which include a request from the parish council and from a third party to defer the item in order to allow the representations which were received within the deadline to be included within the actual report itself. The late reps document does outline that we consider the late correspondence to be sufficient to outline those representations, but it is up to members ultimately to decide whether they would rather this item was deferred for those comments to be included into the report itself rather than provided separately. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Lucy. We do have a number of speakers on this item, starting with the neighbour, Mrs. Linda Swallow. You'll have 3 minutes to speak on the application, and when you get to the microphone, press the right button.
My name is Linda. I'm again representing the objectors.
Photo 1, the shilly-shallying continued throughout the temporary period and beyond. Councillors, you have all been misled by the planning officer's report. Objectors have all been let down by planning. There are 68 letters of objection, not 49 as stated. At least 18 objections and the FRS comments submitted before the published deadline have been classified as late correspondence. In the late correspondence, reference is made in planning merits that the car park is not being used. We can confirm that it is. In the interests of all parties, to ensure accuracy, fairness and transparency, we requested a deferral. Vehicles parked in fields of dried crops and weeds can and do catch fire. Photo 2. On BBC Look East recently, the FRS highlighted that human ignorance and negligence exacerbates all those situations. A no smoking sign will make no difference. Photo 3. Pretty wildflowers will not provide all year round protection from fire or crime. Wildflowers on wood and gravel boards will not contain people, children or dogs. Post rope and weeds certainly didn't. Photo 4. The emergency services entrance is a long, narrow, single access and egress for vehicles and pedestrians. Barrels often restricting entry to the main car park, in addition to the recent shipping container. Safety should be a priority, not wildflowers. Photo 5. The police recorded theft was from pensioners, which led the landowner to advise the victims to ensure the applicant erects a secure fence for everyone's safety. Fencing is suggested by the FRS, police, borough councillor and parish council. Photo 6. Overnight parking continued throughout the 17 months. It's not an overflow car park, it's an extension of the original. The applicant had no intention of complying with their own management plan, even questioning unnecessary expense. Photo 7, indicating that the applicant shows no duty of care or responsibility. Our parish council recommended no overnight parking. That should be a condition. Photo 8. The applicant and supporters have not supplied any evidence that the overflow car park reduced parking on the greens. Drivers park on the greens to use a range of amenities in the village. The suggestion that the applicant will identify which vehicles parked on the greens are patrons and encourage them to use their own car park is frankly ridiculous. Photo 9, just as ridiculous as suggesting that residents organise a fire watch. That's the applicant's duty. Photo 10, councillors, if you are minded to approve this application, please stipulate that secure, robust fencing must be erected along with mature evergreen hedging before continuing use of the area to ensure everyone's safety. Photo 11, to ensure the applicant does not continue to ignore your conditions, a rigorous inspection programme must be put in place with strict enforceable conditions. Otherwise, the applicant's continuing failure to comply will be rewarded with your permission to carry on regardless.
Thank you. Swallow that for 3 minutes. Thank you. Our next speaker is Mr. Kevin Hobbart. You too will have 3 minutes to speak.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Kevin Hobart. I'm the chair of the Great Messingham Parish Council. Just wanted to voice our frustration and annoyance that our correspondence did fall outside of the change date for submission. So that was very frustrating for us. And I hope all members have read our latest correspondence and recommendations, which fell in line with some of Linda's concerns. We do support the application for the overflow car park because it does actually ease the congestion on our beautiful village greens. You'll see from Linda's photos that there is congestion. The pub and the accommodation, it's a destination venue. It's used by locals as well as visitors to the village. And we want to ensure that the cars are taken off of our village greens and off of the streets around the centre of the village to ease congestion. We do have some recommendations. We don't think the wildflower border is going to make any impact to the fire restrictions. We have had a recommendation from the fire brigade and from a local landowner who said that a natural hedge would be a better fire break than a wildflower border and a bit of cut grass. Also, we agree with the local residents around having a secure fencing around the car park as per the Norfolk Constabulary recommendations to stop anybody wandering into adjacent properties. And we would also look to consider how that overflow car park is restricted to business hours. So those will be our recommendations. Hopefully you've seen those in our late correspondence, but we did ask for it to be deferred. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hubbard. 5 minutes. Councillor Bills, thank you. You'll have 5 minutes to speak on the application.
Thank you, Chairman, members. I'll start by highlighting, you've heard it, the local resident and parish council request to defer. They did make their comments some days in advance of the published deadline of 21st of July. And I think primarily they feel a bit aggrieved that they reported as late correspondence, as they fear that this could portray them as dilatory and disrespectful of deadlines. I can reassure you members that nothing could be further from the truth. And the parish council actually held an extraordinary meeting to consider their comments. But should you choose not to defer, I would make the following points. And I make those points having attended a number of parish council meetings where this has been discussed and met with residents and the applicant. And this is an important application for residents and the parish council and of course the applicant. Offence. Norfolk Constabulary consultation input of 27th of February 2025 states clearly that there should be, and I quote, appropriate access gates and perimeter fencing installed, unquote. You have heard concerns relating to petty crime and that patrons of the pub sometimes wander across the open field, whether cropped or not. A simple post and wire livestock fence of the sort found all over the countryside would keep patrons where they should be and reassure the public. A hedge, that same Norfolk Constabulary input also refers to a hedge alongside the fence and states, and again I quote, this is especially relevant to a rural village such as Great Massingham, unquote. As well as softening the appearance of the fence, a hedge would screen the car park and greatly reduce fire risk. And prior to recent rains, I'm sure members have noted make irregular media reports of fires in the countryside, field fires. Parish Council support this application, as you've heard, subject to conditions. One of those is that a hedge is in place. And their view, as has been said, has been informed by one of their number, Councillor Brunn, who is both an arable farmer and a firefighter. An expert opinion if there ever was one. In late correspondence, planning officers acknowledged that the Fire and Rescue Service suggested a hedge, but are of the view that it would not be likely to prevent fire spread. I would take issue with that. In my youth, I farmed and I did a lot of stubble burning. It was allowed then. And I was young enough and stupid enough to light a 60-acre field in quite a stiff breeze. And a rapacious, terrifying beast of a fire swept across that field in about 90 seconds. But that wall of flame met with the hedge separating me from the neighbour and died away. And that was nothing more than mostly a hawthorn hedge with a grassy bottom. They won't always be quite so effective, but they shouldn't be underrated as a fire break. In terms of screening, the official view is that the car park should have no demarcated boundary and be as light touch in the countryside as possible. And I think that makes sense until the car park is full of cars. And given the success of this pub, and the Dabbling Duck is very successful, that will be pretty often, perhaps most of the time. And then it's hugely intrusive in quite a soft rural landscape. Why should neighbours have to look at rows of cars when they could be looking out at a green and pleasant native hedge that screens the car park from the village and is entirely in keeping with its setting? I might be an experienced farmer myself, but I think from the photographs, anyone can see this is an unused corner of the field, ill-suited to modern farm machinery and unlikely to ever be cropped. So it's worth noting that whatever the outcome of this application, the field is not in the conservation area and the landowner could decide to fence off and hedge that corner at any time. No planning permission needed. So I urge a sensible approach that suits the pub, suits the parish council, suits the residents, and which sits well in the landscape. We need a hedge. So I'm with the parish council and the planning officers, and I support this application but only if a boundary livestock type fence and appropriate hedge are conditioned. Otherwise, I object. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Beales. Before I go to Lucy to pass a comment on that, I personally don't feel there's a real need. If I think the information and what the objectors and the parish council and councillor Beales has done in late reps really clearly just gives the information, and we're grateful for that. What I would like to propose is that we actually do change conditions, so we do have a hedge and a fence board for various reasons. For the fire break reasons, it will create a screen and better enhance the area, and it will appease that and benefit that. So I'm going to propose that we do have a hedge and fence. To have a seconder?
I will second that. Both from Councillor Bone and myself did go out on a site visit to see this site. We were very intrigued to see all the house martins swooping down to the pond that was there, obviously frantically trying to get some mud for their nests. So you can say, I've definitely visited the site, haven't we? And it was a wonderful sight to see, but you could see the very reason why a hedge all the way around it will give that, and not the small little twigs that go in, but a medium size to start with, in order to, you know, say September, October, when you start to put in these things. So that'll get you a lovely green boundary in the summer. I can understand your concerns as well about the cars, but sometimes people forget just how much they've had a drink. And let's face it, if you go overnight, it's usually because it's a precautionary reason. And on balance, I don't really have a problem with that. 1 or 2 isn't going to be a make or break for me, but definitely I'm going to second the hedge, and I can see why it's much needed. But it is a very small corner, and the delineation for 30 cars, it's not onerous. I have to say, I was here when this was a pub with nothing going for it. And Councillor John Dobson, they put it forward, and obviously it got taken over by these 2 people. But what a success story. And that's what we've got to have as well in West Norfolk, successful businesses that do bring challenges at times. But I think with the right reasons, the right conditions, we can get it so everybody more or less can be happy with the outcome.
Can I just add to that? A metre high bank with a hedge on top. A metre high hedge, a metre high bank with a hedge on top. That will work.
That's exactly councillor Beales's fire stop when he was a young man, which was some time ago.
Thank you. It's a bit unpractical. Before I take comments from members, can I go to Lucy or the officers for further comment?
Yeah, so the issue of the proposed hedge was raised with the agent during the application, and they declined to amend the plans to specifically show that. In terms of condition 2, it does allow flexibility there. So if members are minded to, we can change the wording of that to exclude the wildflower planting and instead specify a hedge and a boundary treatment, details to be agreed. In terms of a bank, it is quite a fundamental difference in terms of earthworks and things. Yeah.
It needs a bank.
So the fire break itself has been agreed by the fire service, so they're okay in principle as long as that fire break is in between the cars and whatever boundary is there. I think adding a bank would need going back to the fire service and up to other members to look at the details of that. Well, we probably need that up front, in my opinion.
Okay. Councillor Long, and I've got Councillor Dwyer.
Yeah, I appreciate where you're coming from, Chairman, and you know, what we're looking for is a pragmatic approach that allows the business to continue to flourish whilst squaring the circle of not being an increasing nuisance to neighbours, and that the car park is as visually unobtrusive as possible. And it's a very difficult scenario because ultimately there's a field there, you put cars in it, by default it's a car park. And I don't know at what point you're looking at an application and conditioning things that actually make it a different application. I mean, by default, it is a car park for permanent use. I sat on the committee as a sub, I think, when it was considered for temporary use, and I was supportive of that. But you're not going to go and spend huge amounts of money for a 1-year temporary permission, erecting hedges, fences, you know, matting, whatever it might be. But as you know, with permanent permanent planning permissions, well, then you would expect there to be some investment to make it both right for its neighbours and suitable for operation. This is no good just saying, "Oh, we'll put a hedge round it," and then hope that when it rains a lot in the winter time, that everyone comes in a 4x4 and can escape the field because it's got a bit soggy. So, you know, where do you go and how far can we condition to get exactly the outcome that we want? So I'd be interested to hear what others say. I really am against trying to redesign applications on the hoof. And I think a little bit we're trying to redesign this on the hoof. It's not what's presented to us. We're trying to condition to make it acceptable. And that's the sort of balance we've got to take. But I'll be interested to see what others say. But ultimately, if that's the only way that it could be, could tick the boxes, then I would say yes, some form of permanent hedging that would act as a fire break. Don't see many fields catching fire these days with I know modern exhausts obviously can get very hot, but you know, it's the fire service obviously recognise the issue, so you know they've got to keep the grass short and prevent the problem.
Thank you, Councillor. I don't think we're trying to redesign its recommendation in the report. I've got Councillor Diwali and Councillor Reeves.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to reiterate the Councillor Spiking's perspective that this is an important business to the village. It was about 20 years ago when the late Councillor Tilbury campaigned with parishioners vigorously to reopen what was then the Rose and Crown, which had been closed for 5 years. So what a fantastic success story that we're now in a position that the business has become so successful. We have to consider an overflow car park. So I'm in agreement with the parish council that it's not something we want to oppose, but I too am in agreement with the need for boundary treatments. I would question the need for an appropriate surface, and in this day and age, and as with climate change, we will have more and more vehicles with air conditioning units, and I am aware of fires that have been started with cars running their air conditioning units. So I do question, I would like to ask why an appropriate surface to the car park hasn't been considered. And with respect to restricting to business hours, I would support that. And again, because there is potentially risk this could morph into a campsite. I know other pubs that have diversified, and I would support that as well. And I would ask, you know, the value of considering such. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucy.
Sorry, in terms of restricting to business hours, this is discussed in the report, but the pub operates as a hotel. So you'd need to be very specific in terms of what hours you're counting as business hours, and therefore when people can come and go from the hotel. From an enforcement perspective, that makes it quite difficult. And whether it's reasonable in terms of conditioning a car park. Realistically, people will use the car park when they need to, and we don't feel that we can easily or appropriately condition it to business hours. Sorry, and the surfacing of the car park, it's never been proposed by the applicants in any way. We need to balance here the rural edge of settlement and the conservation area impacts. They've got a management plan which talks about cutting the grass to be as low as possible, but we don't feel it's necessary to require them to surface the car park given that countryside impact.
Thank you, Councillor Rise.
Thanks, Chair. My concern would be going forward, because presumably once this becomes a half car park, it becomes brown land, and then it becomes quite probable that it could, by a future owner perhaps, be eligible for an application for residential planning commission within the village, within the conservation area. How would we, you say no, but how would we ensure that that could not happen?
sorry, councillor, talk over you. Each application will be considered on its merits. I mean, obviously that is outside the development boundary. You know, it is the purpose of this application is as an overflow car park, which is justified by the public house itself. You know, anything that comes up in the future will be treated as such at that time. But obviously we do have policies that, you know, that state residential development outside development boundaries is not generally acceptable. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, I just wanted to raise that point because my thought is that in the future, once, you know, I'll just repeat that, suddenly this bit of land does become eligible for a possible application for residential use. Not now, not tomorrow, but maybe in the future. And that might be something we should take into account. And if that is a risk, how perhaps can we decide this issue without creating that risk?
Thank you, Councillor Wise. I don't believe that is a risk, as Anna has pointed out. It would be looked separately on its own merits. Any further members wishing to speak? Right, we take it back to the proposal to install a hedge and a fence around the car park. I proposed it and Councillor Spikes seconded it. And that will be to amend condition to scrap the wildflower meadow and install a hedge and fence to create a secluded boundary around the application site. So, those in favour of doing that? It's agreed. Okay, so we now take it to the officer's recommendation, which is with the amendment to condition to approve the car park, use of the car park.
Are you going to call tomorrow? Quickly. Hands. Right.
Apologies. So yeah, members, with regards to officers' delegated decisions, any questions or anything to note, Councillor Everett?
Just a quick question. Obviously, if our performance on the miners drops below 80%, what then happens? Not that it's going to happen, but what does happen?
Well, I mean, effectively we monitor that. So obviously it goes up and down depending on what's going on. Generally speaking, we take a cumulative figure, which is in excess of that figure anyway, but we are monitoring it. Thank you.
Thank you. So the next meeting of the committee is arranged for Monday, the 1st of September. Thank you for all who's attended, and I would like to close the meeting. Cheers. Thank you.